السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. السيد عميد كلية الآداب والعلوم الإنسانية، السادة الأساتذة الأجلاء، الطالبات والطلبة، الحضور الكريم، مرحبا بكم في هذه الندوة العلمية المستنيرة بنور حضوركم ومشاركتكم. ومن حسن الصدف أن تتزامن ندوتنا هذه مع ما تعرفه بلادنا من نقاش لغوي، ولا سيما فيما يتعلق بتدريس العلوم. إن موضوع هذه الندوة بعنوان تحليل حاجات الطلبة في اللغة الإنجليزية قد شكل بالنسبة لمجموعة بحثنا هاجسا، فآل على نفسه ما إلا أن يعمد إلى ترجمته عبر ندوة علمية تجمع بين أطرافها ثلة من الأساتذة الباحثين والطلبة. ولعل جلسات هذه الندوة بمحاورها المختلفة ستكشف عما وصل إليه السادة الأساتذة والمشاركون من نتائج وخلاصات. وختاما أجدد الترحاب بالحضور الكريم، وأترك الكلمة للمتدخل الأول السيد عميد كلية الآداب أحمد المحمودي، فليتفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، الصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه. بداية أود أن أتقدم لكم باعتذار السيد رئيس جامعة الإسماعيلية الذي كان يرغب في حضور افتتاح هذا اللقاء الدولي، ولكن نظرا لظروف مهنية أحالته على الحضور، فبالتالي فأنا كرئيس المؤسسة أقدم لكم الترحاب في هذه الكلية وبهذه الجامعة باسم رئيس جامعة مولاي إسماعيل. كما أقدم أيضا لكم كل الشكر والتقدير على حضوركم لأجل تنشيط هذا اللقاء بهذه المؤسسة كلية الآداب والعلوم الإنسانية من بناس. فبداية أتقدم بالشكر إلى أعضاء اللجنة المنظمة وكذلك إلى مجموعتي البحث اللذان نظم هذا اللقاء العلمي التواصلي الذي يهدف إلى النظر وإعادة النظر في تدريس اللغة الإنجليزية بالجامعة المغربية. فأيضا نفس الشكر موصول إلى كل الحضور الكريم الذين جاءوا من قريب ومن بعيد من أجل تنشيط هذا اللقاء سواء من داخل المغرب أو من خارج المغرب. فمما لا شك فيه أن التحولات والتغيرات والمنعطفات التي يشهدها التعليم الجامعي حاليا كان له بالغ الأثر على تعليم وتدريس اللغة الإنجليزية، الشيء الذي أصبح من الضروري النظر ليس فقط في المشاكل المطروحة بل أيضا النظر والبحث عن الحلول الممكنة والفعالة في دعم حاجيات اللغة الإنجليزية وتطوير أساليبها في الجامعة المغربية. إن هذا الواقع الجامعي الجديد أصبح فعلا يطرح إكراهات وينتج ظواهر جديدة تدعو المهتمين والمسؤولين عن الشأن اللغوي في الجامعة المغربية إلى تجديد رؤيتهم في تطوير سبل تدريس اللغة الإنجليزية، وكذا طبيعة الأدوار والوظائف التي ينبغي أن تطلع بها هذه الأخيرة في تنمية قدرات الطالب لكي يساهم في تنمية المجتمع. فاللغة الإنجليزية اليوم تواجه على مستوى تعليمها واكتساب معارفها مشكلات جمة لدى الطلبة والمتعلمين، وليست جامعاتنا في نهاية المطاف إلا صورة موجزة عن الضعف اللغوي المستبد بجميع مستويات تعليمنا. يبدو أنه من الرغم من الوضعية المزرية التي تعيشها اللغة الإنجليزية في الوسط الجامعي، فإن الرهان لعلاج ضعف الطلاب في اللغة الإنجليزية يمكن تحقيقه، لكنه يحتاج إلى وعي وإدراك المسؤولين بخطورة المشكلة أولا، وبسرعة المعالجة الناجعة ثانيا، وهي خطوات تحتاج إلى قدرات شجاعة تترجم نتائجها إلى برامج وأنشطة وخطط ترتقي بتعليم اللغة الإنجليزية داخل الجامعة وتهتم بدعمها وتحسين بيئة تدريسها. إن إعطاء اللغة الإنجليزية مكانة فاعلة يحتاج إلى تضافر كل المتدخلين سياسيين وتربويين وجامعيين في سبيل تحقيق الارتقاء اللغوي والثقافي والتعليمي، لكن هذا التعاون ظل إلى اليوم تعاونا ضعيفا يؤثر بشكل سلبي على اللغة الإنجليزية التي أضحت قضية كباقي القضايا السياسية الأخرى ترسخ بين الملفات العالقة في ذاكرة التناسي. وعليه فالنهوض بالإنجليزية يحتاج إلى وعي سياسي ومجتمعي حقيقي من أجل إدراك التنمية الشاملة في المعالجة الاقتصادية واللغوية والثقافية. وإذا كان النقاش حول حجم ومدى مساهمة الفاعلين السياسيين في تدهور اللغة الإنجليزية يعتبر غير ذي مجدي، لأنه سيظل غير قابل للحسم، فإن الحقيقة لا مجال فيها وفي الشك فيها تتمثل في اليقين الثابت بحتمية دور الأساتذة الجامعيين والفاعلين التربويين في تأهيل اللغة الإنجليزية، وذلك بوصفهم القوة الحاملة للتغيير. ذلك بالذات هي الرسالة التي يريد أن يمررها منظم هذا اللقاء الذي يجمعنا اليوم برحاب كلية الآداب والعلوم الإنسانية بمكناس التابعة لجامعة إسماعيل، وذلك للمساهمة والانخراط في دينامية التغيير والارتقاء باللغة الإنجليزية وإنجاز هذا الورش الضخم والذي يتطلب الابتعاد عن التسرع والارتجال، كما يستدعي المثابرة والجرأة والحزم من أجل إيقاف مسلسل التدهور. فهذا اللقاء هو فرصة للتفكير جميعا في التدابير اللازمة اتخاذها من أجل تأهيل اللغة الإنجليزية وفي تحديد السبل الكفيلة بمعالجة التعثرات والاختلالات في اتجاه تحسينها والارتقاء بأداء الفاعلين التربويين ضمن مقاربة قوامها أن يتحمل كل حسب موقعه ومهامه المسؤولية الموقعة على عاتقه. ومن المؤكد أن التزام المسؤولين التربويين بهذا المنحى في التفكير سيمكننا كجامعة من تقديم إسهام وازن في دعم اللغة الإنجليزية وفي تثمينها، كما أن هذا التوجه سيتيح لهذا اللقاء تحقيق المبتغى منه المتمثل في النفاذ إلى عمق الإشكال والقيام بمساءلات عميقة وتقديم حلول مبتكرة وجريئة لا تخشى التغيير أو القطيعة. وختاما، وقبل أن أنقل الكلمة إلى السيد الرئيس، أتقدم بخالص الشكر والتقدير إلى كل المنظمين والصاهرين على هذه الندوة، وأن أرحب بكل حضور كريم في هذا اللقاء. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
نشكر السيد العميد على هذه الكلمة الهادفة، والآن أعطي الكلمة للأستاذ محمد دارس.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السيد أمين الكلية السيد محمد المحمودي، السيد مدير المدرسة العليا للأساتذة السيد النصر، السادة الأساتذة الأفاضل، أعزائي الطلبة والحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. إن اختيار موضوع تحليل حاجات اللغة الإنجليزية في مؤسسات العلوم والتكنولوجيا يندرج في إطار تطوير مجال البحث والتكوين، وكذلك الدور الذي يلعبه في إيجاد مقاربة مناسبة لتدريس وتعليم اللغة الإنجليزية في المؤسسات الجامعية التي تستوجب توفير التكوين المناسب الذي يتجاوب مع حاجات الطلبة. إن اختيار هذا الموضوع سيمكننا لا محالة من إيجاد وتوفير مقاربة ناجعة لتنظيم برامج اللغة الإنجليزية بطريقة تجعل من محتوى التكوينات المقدمة ذات صلة بالحاجات المحددة لفائدة الطلبة. وبعبارة أخرى فإن تحليل حاجات الطلبة هي الوسيلة الأنجع لتحديد المقاربة المناسب من أجل تدريس اللغة الإنجليزية في المؤسسة الجامعية ذات الطابع التقني والعلمي. ولكي نصل إلى أهدافنا المسطرة وجب علينا العمل على تحليل حاجات الطلبة، استنباط مناهج التدريس المناسبة، وإعداد المقررات التعليمية. فما هي خصائص تحليل الحاجات؟ فهي وسيلة للحصول على معطيات أوسع وأوفر لتحليل وتصميم وتنفيذ برامج تدريس اللغة. فهي كذلك وسيلة تستخدم في تطوير أهداف، غايات ومحتوى التكوينات المقدمة، كما أنها وسيلة تمكن من تقديم بيانات لمراجعة وتقييم البرامج والتكوينات المقدمة. فبدون تحليل حاجة الطالب للغة الإنجليزية تبقى أي مقاربة لتدريسها بدون فائدة، إذ لا يمكن أن نتصور مواكبة مستجدات البحث والتكوين في المجال البيداغوجي دون أن تعقد مؤتمرات وندوات لهذا الغرض. وللإشارة فهناك أسباب موضوعية التي أدت إلى ظهور هذا النوع من المقاربة. أولا، عوامل اقتصادية لتدريس اللغة الإنجليزية لأغراض خاصة. استمرار الطلب المتزايد على اللغة الإنجليزية لأغراض محددة في جميع أنحاء العالم. في السنوات الأخيرة أصبحت اللغة الإنجليزية وسيلة من خلالها يتم تعليم وتعلم المواد الأخرى. الاعتماد على اللغة الإنجليزية على نطاق واسع في البحث العلمي والتقني، ويبدو أن عملية تدوين اللغة للإنجليزية تتزايد مع وجود عدد قليل من اللغات العالمية المنافسة لها. وتهدف هذه الندوة كذلك إلى تسليط الضوء على مختلف التداعيات الكامنة وراء تحليل حاجة الطلبة للغة الإنجليزية في مؤسسات العلوم والتكنولوجيا، دراسة التقنيات والإجراءات المختلفة المستخدمة في تحليل حاجات اللغة الإنجليزية في مؤسسات العلوم والتكنولوجيا، ومناقشة مقتضيات الندوة بالنسبة لمصمم المناهج ووضع السياسة اللغوية في المغرب. فإذا كانت العملية التعليمية التعلمية ترتكز بشكل أساسي على المتعلم، فإن تحديد المعلومات بشكل أدق عن أنماط حاجاته الحالية والمستقبلية، وكذلك حصر الصعوبات التي يمكن أن يواجهها المتعلم مفيدين لتحديد أهداف التكوين. أيها السادة الأفاضل، إن انعقاد هذه الندوة الدولية الثالثة في هذه الكلية لدليل على نشاطها المتميز. وبهذه المناسبة لا يفوتني أن أتقدم بخالص الشكر مرة أخرى للسيد رئيس الجامعة وللسيد عميد الكلية ونائبيه لما قدموه من خدمات محمود لانعقادها. كما نشكر السادة الأساتذة المشاركين الذين تحملوا عناء السفر للمشاركة بأشغالها. والشكر موصول أيضا إلى اللجنة المنظمة، أساتذة وطلبة الدكتوراه والماجستير في اللسانية التطبيقية والدراسات التطبيقية للغة. نرجو النجاح لأعمال هذه الندوة العلمية ونأمل أن تنشر موادها. وفقنا الله جميعا لما فيه الخير، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
شكرا. نشكر الأستاذ محمد لاروز على هذه الكلمة الهادفة وهذا ملخص الهادف. والآن أعطي الكلمة كلمة للأستاذ أكينيش.
Normally, excuse me? Sorry for, I should have introduced also this topic in English, so I will switch into English before. It's the same introduction. Okay. Dear Mr. Dean, the School of Art and Humanities, dear Mr. the Director of High School of Technology, Si Mohamed Nasser, dear distinguished Professor distinguished student and distinguished audience. The choice of the theme for this symposium, analysis of students' English language needs in institutions of science and technology, falls within the context of the development of research and training in our academic institutions and the role it plays in finding an appropriate teaching methodology in teaching of higher education, which require appropriate training that responds to the needs of our students. The choice of the theme will inevitably enable us to come with an effective approach to organizing English language programs in such a way that the contents of the courses offered are relevant to the specific needs of our students. Simply put, analyzing their needs is the most successful way and the key factor in any teaching methodology. What are the theoretical assumptions of needs analysis? So needs analysis is based on the following assumptions. First, it is meant to improve teaching methods, adapting teaching to the type of the learner, and training the learners to learn. And then what are the characteristics of needs analysis? So needs analysis can provide us with data for the review and evaluation of the existing programs. It can also provide us with the means of obtaining wider input into the content, design, and implementation of language programs. It can be also used in developing goals, objectives, and content. So it's without needs analysis, as I already mentioned somewhere, it's like building a house on a shaky foundation. So in the literature of ESP, there are several reasons that lead to the emergence of this type of approach. We have economic factors for teaching English for people. We have English has become a means of instruction and training in many higher education institutions. It's a language of science, of research, technology, and communication. And it relies on English textbooks in scientific and technical subjects. And there is a continuing demand and expansion of ESP around the world, and the process of internalization of English is increasing with the presence of other global languages, namely Spanish, French, and Arabic, which are not highly competitive with it. So this symposium is therefore aimed at highlighting the different assumptions underlying the analysis of English language needs in institutions of science and technology, and studying the various techniques and procedures used in the analysis of English language needs in these institutions. It is also aimed at discussing their implications and applications for teaching English, mainly for curriculum designers, language policy makers in Morocco. If education focuses on learners and its relevance to their goals, information about their current and desired needs and perceived difficulties is clearly useful in determining the objectives of the course, which in turn can be translated into educational goals. In short, learners take active role in organizing their own learning. Dear distinguished audience, holding this third international symposium in this institution is a proof of its outstanding activity. On this occasion, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to the President of the University, to the Dean of the School and the Vice Deans for their excellent services they have provided us with. We also thank the speakers who traveled and who took the trouble and time to come all the way from their home towns and cities to come to Meknes. We hope again that the present scientific symposium will achieve its goals and its objectives it has set at the beginning. We'll do our best to publish its proceedings in the not too distant future. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Feruz, for this comprehensive, clear summary of the whole issue. Now, I would like to give the floor and welcome our first speaker, keynote speaker, Professor Afkinish from University Ibn Tufayl, Faculty of Arts and Humanities, Kenitra, who is going to speak about ESP and Morocco, some driving factors. The floor is yours.
Can I use headphones? Mr. Chairperson, Mr. Chair of the English Department in the School of Humanities of Languages and Humanities in CNEF, honorable professors, honorable students, honorable audience, it is a pleasure for me to be with you today, to share with you some of the ideas. Most probably, most of them you already know. I mean, I'm not really going to tell you much which is kind of new, or Professor Larouz has said most of it. But I was wiser, I was like more canny than him. I prepared my presentation on another thing which has nothing to do with this needs analysis. But most probably what I want to share with you is mostly related to this question, why English in Morocco? Why do we have English in Morocco? And what is it that we are doing? What is it that we are doing? Well, when I say we, I'm talking about those who are in the position of making decisions about this English, and also those who are receiving it on the other hand, those who are expecting to receive it. And what is it that we are kind of preparing the future for? I think that most of what I will be talking about could be viewed, could be seen as an extension of what was hinted to, pointed to in the speeches of both Mr. Dede and Professor Larouz. So maybe normally, you know, I do believe that probably the best thing to start talking about this kind is to look back in history. Part of this answer to why English, one could say, and I'm not really here saying anything, one could say that English is probably the only language in the world which has succeeded in forcing its presence in all fields of human knowledge. It really started doing this, or the powers, the political powers behind English started doing this once they have decided to teach English to other people. They were the very first one to embark on teaching it. And English and England, the UK, is quite distinguished in this endeavor since they started teaching what many writers on the topic have termed teaching the world, which is India. India has always been one of the countries, not the only one, but has always been one of the countries in which there was a lot of, the number of people is huge. And England, or the British Empire, decided to teach English to others so as to make them, to make them servants of the British Empire. I mean, it was really declared one of the, I don't remember the name of that first book who was responsible, one of the very first who launched the operation of teaching English in India, when he said we want to train people, we teaching them English, because we want to train people who will serve the British, our interests. And ever since then, this is like the end of the 18th century, and ever since then, English as a language has been enjoying, if you can call it so, the support of all the the word is yeah, all of those all of those who have a stake into it, the politicians, the teachers, and you name it. And English has reached to the point wherein, and I'll be skipping things, because I'm not going to follow what's in there. And English has reached to the point wherein it was present in everywhere. There is this writer, Pope, who in his in a book of his published in 1994 gave an image of this English language, saying that the English language, by the turn of the century, by the beginning of the last 20th century and the end of the 19th century, English was everywhere. English was a language to stop by whenever everyone is interested in getting knowledge about literary history of English language and stuff like this. I'll move through this quickly because probably I don't want Mr. Chair to stop me somewhere. I don't want to, just like in the introduction thingy. English is also a language which has been, just do this, English which has been everywhere. There are like 9 big fields of human knowledge, wherein by the turn of the century, English was there. He was in literary studies, he was English studies, gender studies, he was into writing, composition, teaching languages. He was the leading, you could call it was like the leading language in all these fields. All the other languages followed what the English did. And we can also say, I mean, all of us know this, all the other people working in the other languages are still following what the English are doing, and the English have probably benefited from that world situation in which the world resulted after the Second World War, to the point that now we have this linguist, Kushner, who Kushner, who in 1995 was probably the very first one to draw the attention of people on an academic level to the spreading, to this kind of over-extension of the English language all over the world by talking about these circles, if you know, circles about which David Crystal, in his book in 2003, put in terms of like figures, where he said that in Kushner's inner circle, he kind of said that there are about 300 to 500 people who are speaking English. The inner circle being that circle of native, we call them native speakers. Native speakers of Britain, UK, native speakers of the US, native speakers of Australia, and you name it. While in the outer circle, he said that the figure varies between 300 million and 500 million for what is called the outer circle. Those countries which have had a historical link with England, because they were colonies of England. English is not their native language, but they were using English they are still using English as a native. And then there is what Bashir called the outer circle, wherein David Crystal in 2003 is saying that there are about, it varies between 500 million people and 1 billion. Today people are talking, there is no real people are talking today that the number of people who speak English fluently over the world is 1.5 billion. Maybe more. So English is a language which got to this point, I mean, where it was felt by the, got to this point when it was felt that it should be adopted by everyone. For the Moroccan experience with English started in 1963. 1963 was the start, as a starting date. September 1963 was the starting date of what was then called English, I use the French word because it was purely French English section. It was called English section, and then we've been moving on until we got to today, to which I will be probably coming in. I mean, we have like the department was established, the English department, or it was not even English department. The first name of a department doing this was this Department of Anglo-Saxon Studies, 1967. That was like the very first step wherein it's also started Moroccanizing the stuff. The ties with France were kind of cut off because before 1967 the Moroccan University was tied to Bordeaux. I mean, we were like a branch of Bordeaux. So it's, as far as English is concerned, that's, I think that the cutting of the links with Bordeaux was earlier than this. But for the English department and the certificates we delivered, it had to wait until 1967. And since then, we've been doing an English in Morocco, which was probably not in line with what we heard Professor Leroux talking about as far as the needs analysis are concerned. The only needs analysis, if anywhere out there, were needs analysis which policy decision makers made in their cozy offices, and then they decided that we need an English to make English teachers, and this even showed up on the syllabi. There was the many versions syllabi that was forced for many years on English departments. I mean, from 1973, I guess, or earlier than this, up to 2003, it was always the case that the syllabus was decided by le bulletin officiel. And it was always like a top-down approach. It was always coming from the top. Very few what we call the professionals of the language were involved into these decisions, and one could even say that even today, very few are involved. I mean, very few are involved into trying to answer what English to teach. Well, we are today in this kind of situation wherein we're not even clear about what is it that we're doing in English departments, what we call English departments. Are we language centers, or are we teaching gender, or are we teaching cultural studies, or are we meant to teach translation, or we are torn between so many, you may call it personal, it depends on the number of people involved in each department, then you have a certain tendency, but it's always the case. Since 2003, teachers, and quite a substantial number of them have been involved into making it a must that we must teach English first, and then we start doing these other studies, these English studies, gender studies, cultural studies, linguistics, literature, and you name it. And today, probably I'll end up with this. Today we are facing a big challenge. Today in 2019, our challenge is twofold. When you look at the title of the conference, it's a conference which talks about the needs of students in schools of science and technologies. And these students of science and technologies this year, 2018-2019, according to the figures given by, which are on the website of the Ministry of Higher Education, the number of students has doubled 4 times since last year. 2017-2018, for example, the students studying for engineering the number of students studying for engineering was 2,000, I have the figure somewhere here, was 2,000 something. This year, it's 19,000 students. The number of students studying in, for technologies, it's called technologies on that statistics thingy, in 2016, 2017, 2018, was again 1,000 something. This year is 14,000 students. In addition to this, there is also this other figure which we should be taking into consideration, is that this year, the Moroccan universities, the public universities, I'm not talking about the private sector, even these figures that I was giving there are figures for public sector schools in some sense. The overall number of students is around 900,000 students. 900,000 students. The overall number of faculty, teachers of English in the various higher institution, public sector higher institution, does not exceed 700 students. So 700. So you could see the rate. It's huge, and the rate is even. It would be like the challenge would be even bigger, more frightening, if you can call it so, once we bring into focus what the Minister of Higher Education was saying in his tours of Morocco over the last, probably the last 3 months, ever since the Marrakesh meeting in October. This idea that we are starting a new degree, the bachelor, it's 4 years. It's a new degree in which all the students will have to do languages, and the reference there is being to English and French. It's a teaching of the languages throughout. I mean, if ever we apply this bachelor's conception thing, which is the 4 years, it's throughout the 8 semesters. We'll have languages, we'll have English, definitely, because the minister does not stop talking about the importance of English, and Professor Lagos has also pointed to it, Mr. Tadin has also pointed to it, the importance of English in the world of academia, in research, in science, the necessity of English to achieve development and stuff like this. So the challenge is huge, and it doesn't seem that we are making the necessary measures, the necessary stops for meeting the challenges. And the minister was talking about 2020 as the start of this program of his. It's all wrong, yeah, he's been like talking about it. There are documents which are circulating on the website, and I think that the conference, the convening of this conference is probably very timely, and should be like the emergency then, telling us that we should not dormir, I'll say it in French, we should not dormir sur nos lauriers. There's a lot of work, a lot of hard work, among all the professionals of the teaching of English. We have to
go one side.
Back up and buckle up things and be ready. Because ever since this talk started, we're still only into talking. There are no measures. There is a need also for probably thinking about another way of doing needs analysis. This way which we have in the books there probably may not work. I mean, that's not how we will face the needs of 900,000 students. I mean, if you subtract from them the number of the English department students, we will still be left with 850,000 or maybe less. But it's the 800 to 80,000 students will be there. Why I'm saying they will be there? Because the minister, in talking about this English language, he has been talking about tying the degree of this bachelor, tying it with a certificate in languages, tying it with a certain level, in languages. The minister has been talking about the necessity for everyone wanting to get a bachelor degree to present a certificate specifying that they have a B2 level in a language, French or English, and the push is towards having the students do in English. So anyone involved in teaching English, your life, our life, is going to be very difficult. We will be holding some responsibilities that probably we're not yet ready for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Afkesh, for the driving factor, especially historical one, probably that most of us didn't know before. ختاما نود هذه الجلسة الافتتاحية، ختام الجلسة الافتتاحية أن أشكر الجميع، جميع أعضاء الجلسة والسادة الأساتذة والحضور، ونرفع الجلسة بحضور حفلة شاي على شرفكم والسلام. 15 دقيقة كاستراحة.
Now we get to serious matters concerning needs analysis. I welcome visiting professors, I welcome the students. Normally we were supposed to have 4 speakers in this panel, but Madame Azouzi, we excuse her, she's just lost her brother. She's not in the mood of giving any participation. عزاء الحاضر أستاذ عزوزي. And in order to save time, I start by giving the floor to Professor Kandusi. Professor Kandusi is the product of this university, I guess? Sure. And he is now professor at LNS in Midlands. And UST, sorry. I'm a bit confused because I'm his participation is going to be on ESP curriculum development and the learner's profiles, some key considerations. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I first of all have to seize this opportunity of being the first speaker. It's this luxury to thank all the organizing committee for the wonderful efforts they've made to ensure the success of this academic event and gathering. I'd like also to thank you for the wise choice of this theme, which is both interesting and timely. It's timely as you have mentioned earlier on this morning that educational experts as well as politicians and decision makers have been gathering over the last few months to engineer an educational reform that is likely to confer a special importance on what we call soft skills. In our case, it's English language learning. So hopefully and thankfully, this will help promote the status of English in our university institutes. Indeed, my paper this morning is a second prong of a research endeavor that seeks to set up kind of framework for undertaking a general review of English syllabi or curricula I will be using the terms interchangeably, though there are differences, of course. Inside the school where I happen to work, I also think that much of theoretical literature will be spent out later on by other speakers. I think that the background information has been presented by Dr. Afkinis this morning, as well as Professor Douglas. The purpose of my presentation, as you can see, is to elicit empirical data or data from respondents who are students enrolling in a department which is called PCC, and that can be roughly translated as Marketing and Business Communication Department inside the School of Technology. So this purpose, as I have said, is going to reflect on this issue of gearing what students learn to the needs of the job market. As we all know that professionals and educationalists have all observed the awful linguistic shortage of most students and graduates. Students who graduate from vocational schools as well as those who graduate from engineering schools. So with very few exceptions, most students face enormous challenges in accessing the world of work with a command of English language. Though some engineering schools require that their graduates get what we call certification, okay, in terms of TOEIC or other tests. So let me just give a very brief overview of the position or the status of English inside STM. There has been kind of corporate culture dominating the school for, I would say, more than 15 years, or maybe since its opening, that relegates the status of English to a secondary, maybe lower position. I mean that English is not taken as an independent module. It is a mere component of what we call langue, right, next to French and Spanish. This is also reflected on the insufficient number of hours allocated to English, which is about 2 hours a week, but okay, this is not taken over the whole semester, more over the whole period of training. So students generally just study about 60 to 70 hours, okay, over the whole 2-year period. Recently, of course, other departments like civil engineering and electrical engineering have taken measures in order to boost the position of English by, of course, adding more time to the course. The course descriptions or descriptive have been laid down by non-specialists in the area, and they are just sketchy in terms of their descriptions, and both English and French share the same descriptions. And these are basically grammar-based course descriptions. And of course, this is in line with or reminiscent of the NBC series title, Father Knows Best, because they assume that they know their students better than others. As I said, the major motivation behind this work is this observation as well as empirical finding, which I conducted 2 years ago and which is published now, that even teachers agree that students suffer too much in terms of the linguistic competence. So the diagnostic tests I administer at the beginning of each year, as well as the end of term exams, reflect this shortage, because most students score just poorly on diagnostic tests, and in the end of term exams, of course, they don't perform well. So I think these are all what we call indicators that there is something wrong, that we need to undertake, okay, serious work in which we can review the syllabi, okay, almost extensively. This is also confirmed by professionals. Professionals agree that the students who enter job markets, okay, they lack what you call the communicative ability to speak. And this is even further documented by Ginsberg and Brito, who say that companies or corporations who hire students with a very strong linguistic background, they enjoy a competitive advantage that can reach up to 25% of employers. So allow me, excuse me if I go a bit quicker on the slide just to meet the time met by the chair. So I won't go into details as to the merits of news analysis as a vital asset for students, of course, to all other partners in the learning teaching operation, but for teachers, of course, it's of vital importance because it allows the teacher to be well informed about the needs of the students, the frustrations, as well as the expectations. It's also an opportunity for teachers to review and innovate so that the learning operation will be more enjoyable and at the same time manageable. 4 questions were formulated in order to guide this research study. The first one deals with the perception of the most important and difficult, the areas which are most important or difficult in the ESP program. The second research questions relates to the attitudes towards key ASP related pedagogical and methodological issues. The third one relates to the tasks and activities that learners suggest need to be incorporated. And the fourth one is about the educational level correlation, okay, between the learner's perception and their needs in these programs. The population, as I said, is entirely students from this department as a first phase, in the first phase, because the questionnaire is going to be administered to other students in other departments with a view to comparing the different populations and of course come up with interesting findings. The questionnaire is written in English. 15 questions were included, both open and closed-ended questions. And this is why I did not deem it necessary to conduct an interview, because the closed-ended questions really provided me with an in-depth and insightful input. Right. A number of findings we reached at, and I will be very selective. The first one concerned the students' assessment of their own English proficiency level. The purpose behind this question is just to compare students' self-perception with the teacher's observations and, of course, scientific and empirical findings. And there transpired no surprise, as most students actually are below average with roughly, I think, 2110, that's around 70% or more. Students were also asked about about their perception of the importance of ESP courses. The majority of students recognize the importance of learning English for specific purposes, or what is called langue professionnelle, as the statistics demonstrate. However, they are also cognizant of the fact that students is very useful and interesting for their future academic success, as well as their prospective success in the workplace. So, theoretically speaking, students are well informed about the utility of the English language. Still, a question that sought to unfold their attitude toward the themes and topics, namely on the content of the English course, left me with a kind of surprise, as the majority are unsatisfied with the content of the course. And this is reflected in the statistics. Okay, a number of students were uncertain, and this uncertainty, of course, can be explained in different ways. Maybe they are not, okay, they do not exactly know what the content is, and they cannot analyze it, maybe because they are just busy with taking exams. As to the scale of satisfaction with teaching method of the English course, this is another question that gave me a very, very important finding. And of course, I realized that maybe there are a number of innovations and changes that need to be introduced in the English course, because today's young learners are not really ready to learn with traditional methods, because we are dealing with the tech-savvy generation that expects teachers to deal with, as we'll see later, of course, to deal with the material in a very innovative and technologically based way. As to the language skills, which are rated as the most important interesting, on top of the list came oral communication and speaking. Oral communication was a phrase that stood for their ability to deliver speeches and manage public PowerPoint presentations. Speaking was used in order to refer to their ability to engage in oral discussions and debates. So as you can see, the reading and listening were rated among the list, and this is another surprising finding. Right. As to the ones that were rated as the most difficult or challenging, once again, and surprisingly enough, it's oral communication and speaking. This fact means that those students realize the importance of these skills, they still fear them as they were engaged in, because they had to prepare so much, and they felt, of course, that they are so threatening. Maybe some students describe them as life-threatening. They would rather die than just talk in front of people. Once again, writing and reading were rated as the most challenging and difficult. With reference to the perception of the difficulty level of assessment, and as expected, and as I said, and this is reflected in their scores, the majority of students rated the difficulty level, either average or difficult to very difficult. And of course, this is to be explained later. The classroom teaching material was described as interesting. The instruction time, as I said in the beginning, was confirmed once again that it was not enough. 82% of students said the 2 hours time instruction, and which is reserved entirely for technical classes, is hardly enough, because they still feel that they need more time in order to develop their basic skills. Students were offered the opportunity to come up with recommendations and make suggestions. As far as the tasks and activities are concerned, as you can see on display screen, the first suggestion by students was incorporating extracurricular activities in English, like having theater in English, or watching movies, or other similar activities. Second came the inclusion of more teamwork and class projects, and in third place, introducing grammar activities. What is striking here is that these important skills are relegated to the last positions. There are other recommendations by same students to improve ESP courses. The first one, and which enjoyed about 68%, they require that more English language instruction time be granted to ESP, English in general. So some students suggested about 4 hours, others 5 to 6 hours, because they thought that 2 hours is hardly enough, as I said, and therefore they need to study more grammar, and they need also, as he stated in the second suggestion, there needs to be a coping strategy for students to have a kind of support with difficulties so that they can manage the other tasks. Updating the teaching method, implementing ICTs, the instruction came in the third place. Now, after all these statistics, which were just swiftly presented, because I hope that in the publication there will be more explanation and more, of course, elaboration. A number of implications and recommendations can be made. But before I move on to these, I would like just to mention that students' input, important as it is, need, of course, to be taken with, as you say in English, with a pinch of salt, because a number of suggestions and a number of answers were just vague or incomplete, because these students are in S2, or maybe they're just repeating. And these students do not have a very clear idea about what a teaching method is, what content is, and therefore we need to build on these suggestions, these attitudes, but still we should not take them as absolute truths in undertaking a review of the syllabus. Okay, the recommendations. Right, one relates to material selection. So the ASP teacher needs to customize his content. In other words, there should not be just mere reliance on textbooks, very often commercial textbooks, despite the many merits they enjoy, like having a teacher's book, multimedia material. Still, very often they are too general and do not tailor. They do not cater to the needs of the students, and they are not tailored to the specific needs of many specialties. There also need to be many consultation sessions between ASP teachers and specialized discipline teachers, which in my experience have never taken place. Another important implication is that we need also to listen to former graduates, those who are inside what we call the world of work, because they have direct contact with the world of work and of course can communicate important, what we call important inputs about their experience and what needs to be taught so that we can achieve what it was called a high surrender value, to borrow this insurance-based phrase. The syllabus could also incorporate aspects of the student's specialty area just to increase their motivation. As far as assessment is concerned, I think students are not satisfied with assessment, so because they feel that there is no fairness, because many students in our department don't study professional English, and therefore they score higher. So if assessment is to be done, then it should be done on an egalitarian basis. Other recommendations relate to the need for teachers. Most of these recommendations are meant for us as ESP teachers. They need to be open to new ideas and be in constant touch with recent developments in business, commerce, science, technology, and knowledge. And this is told all that it's a very formidable task for ESP teachers who are not really technically prepared for this job. Teachers also need to seek opportunities for self-improvement in terms of training, in terms of conferences, in terms of seminars which are meant to enhance and enrich the teachers' methodology. As a conclusion, I can say that needs analysis remains a very important element, vital tool in the hands of teachers. Still, relying on it solely will not be very effective. Therefore, we need to also draw on other partners, namely decision makers, ESP teachers, current and former students, specialized discipline tutors, and business and industrial partners. And as I said, okay, we need not just contend with what students say, but we need also to rely on our intuitive ideas and as we call it, the intuitive approach. I think that's also very useful, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khandousi, for this very succinct presentation and highly targeted. This is what we need indeed in order to have good studies to rely on for a general needs analysis. I believe that probably if such research is done in different scientific institutions around the country, that would yield reliable results to build upon. For the audience, please, if you have any questions for Professor Khandousi, note them, and we will give you the floor when the presentations are finished. Now I give the floor to Professor Fatim Zahra Al-Amrani, who is coming from the Faculty of Science, Dar al-Marez Fes. The floor is yours. And she's going, we need light. I mean, I can't read. I can't read the title of the presentation. Will you switch on the light, please? Yeah, we need it. Yes. And I guess that, well, maybe these not necessary for the presentation to appear. Anyway, she's going to talk about reflections on needs, challenges, and expectations of ESP learners in Moroccan universities. The case of the Faculty of Science in Fez, which is another case study that would probably add another drop to what the first presentation has already started. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you hello everybody. Thank you for having me here. Actually, this presentation is based on an opportunity that I had to teach and work with ESP students at the Faculty of Science in Fez as a part-time teacher in the last 6 years, which has been great and challenging experience, and I'm very glad to be able to be here today to share with you this experience, especially some of the main challenges and problems that students are currently facing at the target faculty. Maybe because of one main reason, because the new challenge for the higher education in the 21st century is how to balance professional and general education goals in order to meet the changing needs and requirements of the modern society. This challenge has brought with it greater demand by the American higher educational authorities to improve the status of English that is becoming the language of science and technology. This is clearly expressed in the words of the previous Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research in Morocco in 2014, when he emphasized that proficiency in English should be taken as a crucial part of the recruitment process, namely in the areas of science, technology, health, economics, and management. He added that the importance of acquiring English as the language of scientific research to the point of making its mastery as a requirement for obtaining a doctoral degree. His declaration refers to ESP program directly, and it has profoundly impacted the parameters of the ESP course, especially the learners who are really lost, because the situation the current situation of the SP program is so much confusing in many ways, because there is a huge gap. On the one hand, there is the declared objectives made by the Ministry of Higher Education, and on the other hand, the practices on the ground, because the current situation of the SP program is static. The curriculum is static, and the SP teaching is constrained by many factors. Such an apparent gap has pushed me as an SP practitioner and as well as postdoctoral researcher to inquire about the different challenges and factors that contribute to the current conditions of the SP course. And concerning the methodology, my observation as an SP practitioner for more than 6 years, starting from 2013 at the target faculty, and the needs analysis questionnaire were the major data collection tools of this inquiry. The questionnaire was distributed to 75 MA students from different scientific majors and at the target faculty, and the main purpose behind the questionnaire was to compare between the current conditions and the desired ones, more specifically to identify the current problems encountered by learners, and finally to reflect on different challenges and factors that contribute to the present conditions. Let me start by the language proficiency factor. As you could see from the profile of the SP practitioners at the target faculty, including me, in the last 6 years, the majority of the practitioners are doctoral students and the majority and part-time teachers. There is also the question of mobility, because as I'm sure that many of you know, part-time teachers teach at different faculties. They teach at the Faculty of Science, and the following year they will teach at the Faculty of Economics, for example. So even the fact of changing and replacing teachers each year and sometimes during the same academic year, in this way teachers could not identify the learners' needs, and students themselves don't collaborate with new teachers. So there is also the question of training. The majority of with the exception of the manager of the program, the majority of the practitioners at the target faculty have no prior training. And as I'm sure that many of you know, the entering teachers are often less familiar with the subject matter, teaching materials, and we know that the selection of materials is a critical issue in the SP course. Less familiar with teaching strategies, teaching context. So this factor, which is related to the limited English proficiency, suggests that teachers struggle to fulfill their roles as an SP practitioner. And if the teacher doesn't have the necessary skills to teach effectively, then it is an unrealistic expectation to equip students with the type of English necessary for the highly competitive job market. This situation is made even more challenging because of the language proficiency of students. The SP, as the name suggests, is the teaching of English related to student-specific language purposes. This underlying fact suggests that students are already have a basic knowledge of general English, which is not the reality at the target faculty. As it is indicated in the table, the students' English proficiency ranges from the level average with the percentage of 59, to low with the percentage of 38.6. Though the data provided indicates that more than half of students have an average level. the results do not reflect the reality of the students' level at the target faculty. Maybe because of the limited number of the participants, because 75 is not enough to generalize about the results, or maybe because students are not sure about their level of English. This view is based on my observation, based on my teaching experience. The majority of the students at the target faculty have low level. And in many cases, teachers, including me, revert to teaching general English. Based on my teaching experience for more than 6 years at the target faculty, I could argue that there is a mismatch between the reality of the students' English proficiency and the curriculum expectations. And in fact, this is an urgent problem because it is difficult to teach the real specific English to students at a time when the majority of them are still confused even at the level of general English. This situation is more complicated by the fact of how the announcement made by the Ministry of Higher Education has shifted or changed the motivational factor or the students' understanding and awareness of their needs and wants regarding the English language study. As indicated, for example, in Table A, more than half of the students with the percentage of 66.6 have speaking difficulties. And as it is also clear in Table B, the majority of the students express their desire and want to improve their speaking skills. So it is clear that being able to communicate orally is currently the main concern of the students. And there is just one point that I would like to make here. Before the declaration made by the Ministry of Higher Education, students were not aware about their needs for studying English. And they had a very pragmatic approach based on the short-term immediate goal, which is to pass the test, get the grade, and forget about it, which is not the case today. They are aware that English have become essential and crucial requirements for their employment and for their academic research. And they even ask teachers and expect teachers to show them strategies to communicate successfully in the target situation. But the question remains, how this might be achieved. It is difficult, and even in most cases it is impossible to cover the real academic and professional needs in only 2 semesters and 1 session per week. So that's the point that I will leave you on. Though the manager is doing, the director or the manager of the program at the target faculty of the program, of course, of the DSP program, is doing his best to support this DSP learning. But the situation generally is dramatic in the target faculty, and I think it's a national problem, and a problem that requires a serious rethinking of the DSP program. And it's really unjust to keep observing this situation, this troubling situation, without reflecting in action, with the excuse that we are waiting for the policymakers to enact change on the ground, maybe in 10 years or more. So if change is to happen, I think that this change must come from within the faculty. It's the faculty staff, in particular professors. We as practitioners should think of an urgent and alternative ways to improve the situation and to build the necessary support for DSP learning. And here are some recommendations that, some of the ways that I think might help to enact change on the ground. Yes, the first one. Departments of English should develop volunteering teaching programs. And here an excellent example to mention is English for All. It is a program that was developed by the Department of English at the Faculty of Letters and Human Sciences, Halim Harazin Fest, taught for the first time in 2015. The intent of the program is to equip students with a basic command of general English for 1 year, providing them with a certificate at the end of the year, of course after passing the test. And I think this is a prominent example and valid step to improve the student level of general English and to support DSP learning. The second point, the second recommendation related to teacher development and also the question of collaboration. I think instead of waiting for the policymakers to provide professional development training or projects, I think self-directed learning is a key direction in teacher development. We, as part-time practitioners or experts, should assume responsibility and for managing and developing our own learning. There is also the question of collaboration. I think special opportunities and efforts should be made to learn and work together for sharing skills, experience, solutions to common problems. And I think this event I'm taking part in, or the organization of this conference, is a perfect example of the opportunities I'm talking about regarding the issue of collaboration. The last point, yes, related to open education practices, supporting DSP learning beyond the classroom. I think that things are changing fast, and the skills we learned in 20 years ago, I think they are not working anymore. We are currently living and teaching in a digital age, and the learners, as Professor Qandusi has mentioned, are digital natives. So I think it's high time to shift to a new mode of delivery and to create a new learning environment. For example, like the example of flipped classroom. For example, we could provide our students by the necessary materials and online content and appropriate content online. And while in the classroom, the main focus will be on teaching them the skills, guiding them, providing them opportunities to practice the skills. And I think that's all. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amrani, for this presentation that goes in line with the first one. And here the case study is at different places, the Faculty of Science in Fez. And I move immediately to give the floor to Professor Abdulkader Abou, who is going to continue in the same line. No, okay, complaining is part of analyzing needs. You have to complain in order to fix up your needs.
Okay.
But Professor Abou is going to talk about a needs analysis approach in English studies, which means we have the study of Faculty of Faculty of Science, and now it's English studies, traditionally called English departments. So, Professor Abu, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. When you are displaced, you lose your ideas, you lose yourself, but you still have something to say. And when you are especially kidnapped by a friend, and you know the saying, the friend in need is a friend indeed. So a friend indeed is the one who kidnaps you. So I'm sorry I'm kidnapped, and when you are kidnapped, you have to confess. I'm going to confess something. First of all, let me confess that it has always been a pleasure to me to be here in this environment, to take part in Meknesses, in events, be it defenses or habilitation or juries, whatever, and conferences.
Excuse me for that, I didn't introduce to you Professor Abu, for those who don't know him, because we know him so closely. I thought that everybody knows him. Professor Abu is the ex-chairman of the Department of English in Kenitra, and he's member of CNRST, he's member of different research groups, and you will see some of what he is capable of.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And when you are also kidnapped, you have to confess, and while confessing you are given time. Because that's the rule of it. And knowing well the literacy, the culture of conferences, if you fail to miss the rules of a conference, you will say nothing. And nothing will come out of nothing, Shakespeare. Something will come of that nothing. I heard a lot of things, and I start by generalizing things, by making remarks, reactions, and so on. I heard more than 4 times the word suffer. I heard more than 6 times things about the student, or maybe everything was veered towards the student. This is the paradigm today, I suppose, and we all talk about this student-oriented approach or whatever. But let me just make this question here. Is that a necessity? Is that out of need? Is that why? And I would say that necessity is the mother of invention. And I heard some historical talk about the why English and so forth and so forth. And we are in a conference that is exactly about needs analysis and so on. Are we not a bit lagging behind, despite the great worth of the conference? A big question. Why am I saying this? It is an answer to something I react to this. Why English in the world? Maybe. Why English in India? Why English in the Commonwealth? Maybe the answer is, and I give it to my friend before, colleague, is those people there, because of, I don't know, they got aware of the fact that needs analysis is something very, very, very crucial to the progress, to the spread out, to the promotion of their language. Had we done the same thing for Arabic, I think we could have been somewhere in the world. But we are, I think, trying, and we have to. It's not a necessity, it's an obligation. We have to go global, whether we like it or not. Now, I will, if you just 2 or 3 minutes after the allowed time.
Extra time.
Yeah, why? This question of why? Yeah, and the answer has always been fallacious or erroneous, if I would say so. I'm not a linguist, I learn, that's why I'm always there with linguists, applied linguistics, sociolinguistics, you call it, psycholinguistics. I learn. And I'm a man of letters, and I learned my English through Shakespeare, and so. Why English in Morocco? We had the answer. it was because of Cat Stevens, because of Bob Dylan, because of, I want to sing, I want to travel. After the 60s and 70s, then the answer changed a bit. It was another necessity, another need, another must. Why English? If you ask anyone here, they say, it is instrumental because it is the easiest way to go to reach the market. And that is not true. It's a fallacy. And that's why we have this. If you look at the syllabus, not the curriculum is something else. This is part of my talk. If you look at the syllabus we have, the core, we have study skills and we have business communication. I was the designer of it somewhere in Jadid and say, and we were haunted by it. We want to have that. The why? Because the national, strategy of it is wants business English. That's, but what is remaining there? The question is big, and I think there is more to it than meets the eye. My thanks, my congratulations, to the organizers of this conference. It has no limit, because it's one of the opportunities we have to seek, to seize, and I hope there is implementation of whatever we come up with. Okay, so I think the best, let me just congratulate the organizers on this event, which is very worthwhile, very important, and it has its cost. And in the meantime, and this is the opportunity for me not to miss, paying tribute to a generation before us. Maybe we are simply the generation of a generation, and we are making a generation. So I must pay tribute to all those who were, mehboomin with the same question, with the same issue, before us. Among them I would cite Jabiri, I would cite what is high about higher education, and I would cite Mr. Debi, I would cite Abu Talib. Those, I pay great tribute to those because they were the pioneers, not only of the English, why English in Morocco, but the needs, the real needs, and they were, they traced the roots for us. For me, because that's part of my talk. And if I just show you my, this is something to read here. I gave to the organizers, say, Leibniz analysis approach to English studies, the worst of, yes, that's what. But I had other titles, because you see, that's very hard to fix. But it boils down to one thing. I had it as an anatomizing the concept of professional. We are within that professional development. Why needs analysis? Because we want to improve, we want to cater for, and not to cater only for the student, we are to cater for the whole fabric. And that's my approach. My approach is, if I may recall that into mine, is what Gears has come up with as that new modern anthropology, which he calls thick description. It's a holistic approach to the matter. If I stick only to this one angle of it, and I show you this, what I call the structural facade, that encompasses the whole thing. It's a package. It's a package. Whose need is it? Whose need is it? Is it only the student's need? What about the teacher, the instructor? What about the decision maker? And what about the think among us, which is at the center, with that, the program, the syllabus. So this approach, I think it should be implemented by hook or by crook if we want to do something. But it has some requirements I'll come to. The other thing, the phrasing of my my interest, it takes, it's centered, it focuses on one phrase, one structure. It's always this, without the English department, we talk about, we have this, without the English, what is the future of? With higher studies and scientific research. There are an upcoming conference in Kenitra. With needs analysis, what's the future of? Humbly and modestly, I hope I'm not repeating history, but I'm making profit from history. I call it a moot question. Because if we are ever to look for answers, there were answers. We were given answers by eminent figures to whom I pay tribute. Okay? I just by furtively quote this Jabri, says, listen to the phrase in it. Tammata. Idem. Conclusion. But this is not yesterday, this is in the 70s. تمت إذن في المغرب الراحل مشكل مزمن. It's a malady, it's a cancer, it's مزمن. مشكل يحتل الصدارة ضمن مجموعة المشاكل الأخرى التي لم تعرف بعد طريقها نحو المعالجة الجيدة. Where are we? Does it resound something we're talking about? A discourse, now, which is, the same thing we're talking about? Wherever you go, wherever you go, in cafes, in Jbel, wherever you go. And we have to mind that discourse. We have to mind it. Because most of it is, the crisis is there, but my question is, who is to be blamed? Am I the teacher, this instructor for 39 years? Have I ever been given the opportunity, personally speaking, to think about what do my students need? What do I need? I'm sure that you, me, the teacher, this has always had this question in mind, but something is wrong with it somewhere, not on him or in him or somewhere. We have to dig into that. That's why I veered my talk to look at history. And I don't believe, because I have some critical reaction to the structural paradigm, I don't know, structure in the minds of the Moroccans, the decision makers. All that is conjecture, tout ce qui est conjoncturel, overnight becomes structural. I give you an example. I was back into history when I was doing my DEA, and I remember well that Roland Barthes and another one, maybe Deleuze or something like that, they came to Rabat and there was an insightful conference talking about structuralism. We heard for the first time about structuralism in a conference. And that was towards the end of June and the beginning of July. And in September, we had it in the program. It was on the agenda. And I was victim of that. Believe me, I'm being honest. Allah yarhamha, the late one to whom I pay tribute, Risasi. I was at the front row and she said, please, Mr. Abu, I was the genius in structure. I didn't know anything about it. And she said, please prepare something for us on structurism for next week. I said, ma'am, what are you doing? I don't know anything about it. I heard someone talk about it somewhere. How can I know? I said, but I forced myself. The only one I could, to my, now I'm going to go, I'm going to leave next year, inshallah. I said, the only one I knew that time is Levi Strauss. And I couldn't understand things in that because it's a whole thing. And that's a need we have to surmount. We have to think about and we have to take into consideration. What we make is something parachuted. We think of whatever course, you know, you want to do. And we had a great deal about it in the, if you look at the what we call today, l'architecture. You just look at it and you find culture. Find culture, cross-cultural, multicultural, you know, and you go for, say, media. I think that's part of the main reasons and causes for this decline of languages. At our time, and I have to look, I'm at myself is a lot of things, cultural, linguistic, and everything. During the 1670s, when I learned English for Bob Dylan, I think my English was, you know, the language was, there wasn't a new. Today's, well, we teach people, we teach students. I'm not blaming the teacher, neither the teacher nor the students. I'm asking the question and the answer is somewhere else. I'm going to read things for you because my references to back up my argument are not, are in history. The thing we miss. We want to introduce something. Let's have this historical background preview of it so that, let me just tell you one thing about my students whom I love. And without love I cannot teach them, and I couldn't have taught at all. I love them all, and there is no bad or worse, bad or good. This historical preview is very, very important. Because I was told once by a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, and he told me, why not the history of the language, before doing linguistics? Just tell them about the history, it was pertinent. We're always, always hasty to say the thing is in fashion, we do it. And I think, I'm not saying no, we need to rethink it. We need to reconsider that because we cut it short. We cut it short. Let's go to the thing itself, take time, and then answer the question appropriately, rightly. Now, I give a metaphor for this 10 meter Eden Azma, and there is no surprise about it today when we have the highest confessing that, saying that we have. So no, which is something, now it's common. Now, for me, I say this why, always answering the question, the need. And I mind this question so as not to confuse it with the nuance we have with what for. If you have a look at our course descriptions, nationwide, because we have a common core, you ask the teacher to give you, it never tackles the needs. It tackles the objectives. Basically, to familiarize the student with, to initiate the student to that's content of the course is very faint. What is it exactly? It's it's indeterminate. The methodology of it, I think, I'm not judging. Maybe it needs some refurbishment. And I think we are at the core of the problem. But that was the fashion, that was the thinking. And we worked following, in accordance with that. Today, I think it's high time. It's high time we reconsider the things. And my argument, this is in history. The answer is in history. All we need today is to ask what needs do we need for needs analysis. Exactly, we have to identify those. And I think people greater than me, more intellectual than me, because of a lot of reasons, have already provided the answer, but it is shelved. I think we simply take it from the shelves. And another need is bread. We have to implement. If you read the report of the Higher Education Council or whatever you call it. What is it? A rereading of the Mithaq said this and it was not implemented. Are we going to implement that? The need is here, the answer is here, implement it, give us time, and then we will be. I'm saying this because I'll just provide the metaphor because knowing the rules of the game, he will say in 5 minutes and I will be frustrated. And that's, that would kill my need.
No, I won't. I thought it was listening to you.
I give the metaphor just to give you an idea. Imagine, because we are in the cultural, talking about all this, and we seem to forget or to take it for granted. All that is, those who are here, and I see some faces, this is my first advice and ever lasting advice. Please, if you want to go modern, if you want to go, to be new, ask the questions on that which is taken for granted. You eat couscous on Friday, ask yourself, why do I eat couscous on Friday only? Except this teacher and his wife, because they are both working on Friday, don't make it, they make it on Saturday. But why is it now, today? It's community-like, everybody goes and leaving work, leaving classes. No, I'm simply ask the question. And asking the question, I think, would lead us to that. All of us say we need critical thinking. We don't ask the question and we say that we are critical thinking. Now that's, I don't know. I think it needs a reconsideration. You take it for granted. That which we take for granted, we seem, I think, some are right. We seem to take for granted is the natural. And you say it's there, fine. And we tackle the cultural. All this talk, I said we are lagging behind. People, the British got aware of the fact that if we don't study the need for, English should have, but now, is it only England? Yes, all the world. What about France and English? And you name it, Spain and English. It's everywhere, it's the same position. But the metaphor is, imagine someone thirsty. Someone who is thirsty. في العطش. العطش ما فيهاش ثقافة. العطش c'est طبيعة. The need is a need, isn't it? Thirst is a need. What would you give him? Water. If you want to fulfill that need, you must give water. The metaphor, I'll take you, but I'll say it in my way. It takes us to 2003. المغرب العميق, Morocco was asking a question. Morocco was thirsty in this field of education, a crisis. Everybody knows that he's a crisis, and we know. What should we have done? We should have provided water. We did not provide water. We provided another liquid which is not water. Which means that تمت مجلي. It will be forever. If we rethink the situation, as morally speaking, uprightly as possible, then we say, you identify the problem. It was done by, read, 2009-2008 reports and the vision 2015 and 30. Everything is there. So give it the right liquid to survive. If you don't give it the right liquid, the right water, it will always have problems, biological problems. And we have a biological problems, and it's a structural problem. It's like that natural element. It's a body. It's not only the stomach. It's the stomach, the mind, and everything. And you name it. Needs everywhere. Now, it breeds. It does not stop at one. It breeds, other needs. A need of water, needs, tomorrow we will be scarce in water. No problem. We were given some kind of beer or something like that because the program we had to implement, what was it? اللي داز في الثانوي واللي داز في لا يقول لك شنو اكزافيي ولا داز بالكفاءات الكفايات القدرات جو سي با الادماج شي حاجه بحال هذا وحنا الهاير what was higher education is a system modulaire سمحوا لي مع كامل je ne blâme personne حتى واحد بنادم je ne blâme pas I blame the cultural context which has been politicized somehow. This is where you come from. It's your culture that tells you this. It's somebody in you that and we were given this architecture modulaire. سمحوا لي نقول انا عشتها البادي والعادي قاري ولا ما قاريش اكثريه يقول لك اخويا انا باقي واحد الرافاج واحد جوج موديلات ديال زهره ديال مروه what is this something is I'm not familiar. It's not the water I give to module is not model and everybody says that we have cultivated a kind of literacy, so to speak, a culture, or in our laboratory we call it some kind of specialized language, which is technolect or whatever. Then it's this, but you have to be very careful. You have to be very, very careful. So I think to do that, that's what I have is precious. Yeah. It's almost a tribute to our ancestors, and it is a tribute our future. I see some of them here. Our future, our coming would-be teachers, or they are already, they are facing not challenges, man. They are facing, I don't know, rule or whatever you may call it. So I just decided to go about looking, digging into doing some kind of hafriyat in what exists in this domain. And I started by very quickly. I'll try to use my speed in English. Too sweet, because I have to. I can't trespass. I can't trespass Khatib. Now I have example for the. If you don't mind, there is a need in me. I need to cultivate.
Give him water.
Yes. I've given an example for each side because on the structural facade
How long have you been practicing? 5?
Just this one here, this diagram. This is the approach to the issue. It's not only a matter of the student or the teacher, but it's something that is, I call it a structural facade. We have someone supervising us, and we have someone who takes from that, and someone who gives, the learner, the instructor, and we have the minister, the decision makers, and we have something inside. We have two syllabus, and I think there are people who are going to talk about syllabus and curriculum. We have them inside, and I have tried to give an example to illustrate this need, etc. in each corner. And, I gave an example in what concerns the learner as democratic pedagogy. Something we have to take into account. It's a need. We were not in a democratic. We did not get our stuff in a democratic. There was a Mr. No, and we have something a need. To cultivate in our curriculums, and I call it this inquiry-based approach, this critical stuff, the autonomy of the student, And we have somewhere else, we, the instructors, the teacher, the professor, call it whatever you like, and that is, needs, and this is, I take Khatibi here for his notion of the need of autonomy. Autonomy of the teacher, autonomy of the school, autonomy of the university, and it's very, very, very telling. And for Al-Arawi and so on, it's the archives. And I have a quote by Al-Arawi, says everything we want to say. But this, does not belittle whatever we are doing here in this conference. It's a recall, it's, a prise de conscience, and that's very, very positive. My wish is to implement whatever recommendations we have. Okay. Now, and let me just quote, because it's dear to us all, just quoting, now what the report says about le métier du professeur, de l'enseignant. That's the report. To promote the work of teachers and trainers, to motivate them, ensure their rights, improve their working conditions, enhance their commitment vis-à-vis their obligations, improve their training, redefine the criteria for their recruitment, their assessment and their progress, raise the level of their performance, and it's in adequacy within the requirements of the leader, going global. One thing is missing, and that is the most important thing. Of course, these are conditions, but autonomy is missed as a need for us to create, for us to produce. And about this, Khatibi says very lucidly, le principe d'autonomie, quand il est réel, permet à notre communauté intellectuelle, we are, de s'identifier, de se rassembler autour de la liberté d'enseigner. Tâche noble, empreinte de dignité vénérable, qui accorde à notre métier sa valeur civilisationnelle à laquelle l'enseignant sacrifie, sinon sa vie, du moins sa qualité spirituelle. Aussi, cette communauté intellectuelle est-elle invoquée pour la loi de partage, selon les règles d'un métier, de ses évaluations, de ses gratifications et sanctions. I think it's this I read, the real. I'll stop.
So sorry.
And there is more to it than this.
Sure,
inquiry, we can
there is.
chat it over a coffee over there.
Right. Thank you very much for having
And wait for
said.
the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Professor Yaqub, for having said almost everything. And I guess that talking about the wound and the worry, we will have some 10 minutes discussion, but if you don't mind, I'll start with myself. I have a comment to make. It's something that is
You can serve yourself.
that's good charity, starting from the center. I guess that the only big problem is the rupture that exists between academia and policy making. That's the only thing we have. 5 minutes. Okay, please, 5 minutes for questions. If you have any commentary or any question to the participants, because we have another panel right now. There's another panel starting right now. Are there any questions, any commentaries? Please. Okay, Bilhaj, Zitouni, and Madani, and Khalid, 4 people. Please be quick. I start with. No, you excuse me, professors. I will start with the students. Yeah. See you.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity of asking my question. My question is for Madam Fatim Zahra and Mr. Mahmoud. Okay.
Secondary, Sada Amrani.
Okay. So you talked about the shortage of time that the students of the University of Science and specialist students have when they are studying English. So they have just 2 hours to study English for the whole week. Newman in 1988 pointed out about this problem and gave suggestions about using carefully timed class in the time class and giving the students tracks that would permit them to continue their studies outside the class. So can you give us some information about how to carefully use the time inside the class, these 2 hours per week or 3 hours per week? And you talked about using new technology. So how can we use it outside the class? How can we help the students use it outside the class? Thank you.
Now, Zitouni, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to thank Professor Abdul because he has been reading my mind. And you have struck a very sensible or vulnerable nerve. Your historical approach is very interesting. And perhaps we have this problem with history, not only in terms of education, but in many other fields. The thing that I don't like is the idea that refraining from blaming anyone. Somebody should be blamed. If this chronic disease is to be or maybe cured, and so maybe I can understand you. I can understand this disillusionment because starting from, especially from 2003, we have been through a tragic, I would say, journey, and we still don't know what is coming next. The same politics are still in practice, and something must be done. And I think that maybe one of the initiatives to take is to close these departments and wait for the rain or for something to take place instead of continuing playing the same absurd game. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, Mr. Mulgani, Professor.
Yes, thank you very much. All the panel for their nice and informative presentations. Okay, I have one small comment and a question to my colleague and friend, Professor Kandousi. Of course, I think the topic of needs analysis in ESP is, as you have said, timely, very important. Most of the scholars consider it as an approach rather than a product. But I will just tell you that we are more concerned about the ESP outcomes as a product more. The reason for this is that I think we have more currently today, more criticism that is directed toward these need analysis in the methodology and of course in the approach. And one of the most important criticism that is directed to the needs analysis is that it today serves the interests of the institutions at the expense of learners. How would you react to this? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Magani, and the floor now is to Khalid.
Okay, my question goes to my friend and colleague Mohammed. Just about the figures that you have shown in your presentation, that I find surprising, the way you find yourself surprising, is that the students, they express their needs for oral communication, is in top of the list, but then listening comes at the bottom of the list, which I find really surprising when we know that if listening is the input and speaking is the output, so there's a strong relation between them. So what are the measures, I mean, you take to boost the awareness of students towards this specific issue, especially that they expressed a strong need for movies, 40%, which I find very surprising. Thank you.
We are really handcuffed with time, so I will take one more student, if you don't mind. And one student undergrad and one student postgrad. Sorry, professors, you can discuss later. Yes, your name? Musab. Floor is yours.
First of all, thank you very much for your presentations. I want to say a point which has been already mentioned by I don't know your name. Yes, you focus on oral communication, and most of the students neglect listening. And we know that oral communication is inextricably linked to listening. And you talked about the time of studying, but you didn't talk about the content. Which content are you talking about? And how this content should be transmitted to the learners? Another point is for a book. I think you tackled the root of Professor Book. You tackled the root of the problem, which is history. But we know that all the students of the university go through the stage of the primary school. We neglect the primary school. Primary school is very important also. Thank you very much.
Now I give the floor to Brian.
Thank you all professors for your very interesting, very insightful presentations. I just have maybe small questions for Professor Qadousi. I was surprised to have presented some frequencies when you ask students about the skills which they think are important. You ask them about oral communication, and I think 91% of them said that it's important, and then after oral communication, speaking. Don't you think that oral communication is basically speaking? That's maybe a flaw in the design of the questionnaire. That's number one. Question number two is, given students of this proficiency level S2 and maybe this age, do you think that they are at a level in which they can decide about their needs, taking into consideration the fact that you are asking them about their needs in English, and they basically have no idea about the future of English in Morocco, the future of English in Moroccan companies, in Moroccan firms. So how can I decide about my future in a language, and that language is not mainly the language which is used in companies? Thank you very much.
The last, second one, floor is yours, please. The last intervention.
Thank you so much, speakers. One quote by Dr. Amrani attracted my attention when you quoted Mr. Dawdi. And my direct question to you, to what extent do you agree with this statement, English as a crucial part of the recruitment process? And in this respect, related to Professor Abou's talk, could we say that language or the means of instruction in Morocco is the real problem? Or are there any other problems deeper than that? And I would follow Mr. Abou said, we need to create and produce creative, critical thinking students. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Well, the last person, okay, that will be the last one. I'd like to give the floor to everyone, but we have another panel waiting, and you know, we're short of time. It's already almost 12:15. So please be quick.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the speakers. I'll just link the first speaker, Mr. Kandusi, Professor Aboud. Mr. Aboud was talking about the crisis of the system in general. But if we go back to the first speaker, Mr. Kandusi, was talking about ESP, an example of a scientific institution. And I wonder if we do have ESP in Morocco, because the technological and scientific institutions in Morocco, they teach EGP, English, or English for general purposes. Though they claim that they teach ESP. So some teachers are invited to work in those institutions, and they teach only general English. There's no ESP. So can we really say that ESP courses would have them in scientific institutions in Morocco? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. And I guess that I give the floor to respect the presenters. Now, ladies first. Then I'm going to we always find an excuse to give the floor to someone.
Well, concerning the first question, so my suggestion was a possible way just to deal with the factor of the time constraints. I think I'm teaching, for example, students of computer science, so they could create a private space, an online classroom space, where I could, for example, provide the content, the course, the lecture. I could either record the lecture and then I start receive their questions about the lecture, or I could just provide PowerPoint presentation, and of course they will be asking questions and they will be answering online. And I think, and then we leave while in the classroom, I could focus on we could focus on the practices, we could practice the content and the skills that they need to manage. I think to teach them how to be an independent learners, So I hope that I answered your question. Concerning the question of the professor, I forgot, Professor Kerwat-Smain. I think, I didn't quote Mr. Daoudi to celebrate his speech or something like that, but because based on my teaching experience, it aches my heart, because I noticed that students are really lost, and their confusion came only after his declaration. So I'm looking for temporary solutions, to deal. I'm aware that it's not the means of teaching which is the real problem, but I think that it's really unjust to keep waiting to deal with the deeper things. I'm looking for temporary solutions, to help the students. That's what's really concerned me. And thank you. I hope that I answered your question. Thank you very much.
Very furtively, I react. I'm not saying anything. I'm simply reacting and making remarks. Your statement of you should blame someone. You know what happens? It's the same thing as what happens in feminism. Once the concept feminism, there is behind on the slide the idea of conflict. You and I. And who is you and I? You women, me man. Patriarch. I think we are doing well so far. All of us here are trying to be on the right track. If there is any mistake, it is somewhere else. And I can specify if you like. This question of to avoid it, put it into archetypes. That the archetype of, say, the patriarch. Who is the patriarch? Do we think this is the fallacy? And I'm for this reconsider, rethink, we should, because we take things for granted. Here, the question of feminism, well, it's a problem. Is what about taking another context, which I mean by history. And if you miss the context, we are astray. What about France? I'm talking from experience. A woman, was appointed as an avocat, a barista or something like that, among, in a realm, all masculine. She is really up there. And I said, my God, we don't have this in Morocco. We're doing well in Morocco. At least now, if you look at her, there is a Mudwana that said, you are taken for harassment. It's an advancement. But this is not it. The question is, we have to reconsider. How can we do, what is the need exactly? We start from the natural. You go to the cultural because it's all and this is, who is to blame? According, we are talking, discussing. Is it the doctor or the patient? You are sick.
It's the sickness.
Sickness. And you put it in sickness. Why sickness? Because you don't eat well. Something that goes to your kidney because you don't eat well. It's all lentils, the whole year. Who is to be blamed? I think the answer is anthropology. I think. And anthropology in its modern sense. I'm not talking about, I should look not for the behavior of the people, but the rules that govern that behavior. Say you do like this, Why do you do it? You are not, you take it for granted. It's a behavior. You learned it. We have to go back onto socialization process and all that. The mistake, sir, is you go to, and I tell you a joke about it. You go to the English department and you do English. Full stop. Those who excel and that's a fallacy, those who excel among us, either teachers or students, is the one who do like the native, who speaks like, well, I'm going to, no. That's, no. Go speak into, and when it comes to the depth, I'm not, I say it's not to him to blame. There was something before, that to produce him as that right person. To be quick, speak American today. To be late, to be slow, just speak British English with its accent and with all. But these are called inadequacies in needs analysis. No, these are not really needs to. No. Now, the problem is in this here. We take things for granted. I was once invited to a colloquium in Arabic. It was on Riwaya al-Arabiya al-Haditha, and we talked about Riwaya, and I was there. Remember, I'm telling the English, the students of English, they are old, they know what's about, about the 60s and 70s. They know, I am one of them. I know the novel, I know drama. I went to the conference, listening as politely as possible. Then I formulated a question in Arabic, العربية الفصحى. خرجنا قال لي واحد مشيت تغدى معنا قلت له واخا انا ما معروفش باش غنمشي قال لي والله تطلع جلست حدا هو بغى يحط لي داك السؤال جلست حدا زدنا قال لي والله الا استاذ كتهضر بالعربيه. I was surprised. I did not blame him. That's the stereotype. انا ماشي مغربي ما نهضرش بالعربيه الا قال لي والله كتهضر وكتهضر في الروايه بالعربيه مزيان. That's the stereotype on her. كيدير الفرنساويه كيدير l'anglais, and that's I'm looking forward a kind of new pedagogy, the pedagogy of the complex, wherein you as a pedagogue, no longer a pedagogue, you are the sociologist, you are the psychologist. No, you have to. And an answer to something on ESP there, to cover for my colleague because I know you are there, I say it as an opening sentence in my paper that today needs analysis is or must no longer be the monopoly of ESP teaching. It's a fallacy. What would you do? And you reacted exactly the same. We need English first. Is there any grammar for context? In the Faculty of Letters with Virginia Woolf, Ulysses, there you have to have that special English for it. We have to learn it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Right. Okay, it's not working. All right, so I have the job of the teacher. Yeah, now we have microphones in classes. Yeah, Mr. Mayor is wanting to be as brief as possible. Yeah, 1 minute. I don't think I can answer 6 questions in 1 minute. Well, you may just try to wrap up. So, yes, the first question I think has already been answered by my colleague concerning the insufficient time reserved for. It's not working. Just operation.
Just pressing the button.
No, it's not working. I think the dilemma for teachers in vocational schools is that of trying to strike this balance between. Thank you. Right. This is not working either. Okay. I hope my voice is audible enough. I think this dilemma between students who are already overloaded and teachers who are also overworked. I don't think that we can manage this dilemma so easily if we do not, in terms of institutions, introduce more teaching time to this component of ESP. I think, to be honest with you, I rarely give my students a homework assignment because I know they are already overworked. When I do, I just waste time or I manage the correction with very few students. Most of the time, I take difficult choices. I'd rather my students leave the 2-year period with a skill that can be very useful to them in their later academic or professional life. For example, giving them chances or opportunities for talking to the public. And I here make a bridge to your question. When I put oral communication and speaking separately, as I said, oral communication, I think the questions in the questionnaire were more elaborate and they were understandable to students. Okay, these focus on speaking, public speaking skills and PowerPoint presentations. As to speaking skills, of course, these were reserved for participating in discussions and, of course, debates. So that's why I made a big difference. Now, why listening is ranked among? Because listening activities are, first of all, rarely done in class with S2 students. And second, because it's too demanding for learners. It's too demanding for learners for many reasons, because of the physical acoustics that are not available in those classes, and second, because the questions are hard to deal with. So they rather enjoy talking rather than listen. So when it comes to speaking, they enjoy it because it's challenging, at the same time it's rewarding. I will move on here to Professor Madani's question concerning the serving the institution's interests rather than the teacher. I think it's no secret that there are course descriptions. I think, and of course, you have to, to subscribe to it, because you cannot just devise your own syllabi. And I here once again answer another question, which is that most teachers teach EGP. No, there are teachers who teach ESP because it's officially prescribed in the syllabus. I'm really hustled. Right. Anyway, I'm sorry. Yes, I think I will stop here because I have a number of questions that I have to deal with at leisure. Otherwise, I will just thank you because.
I guess
I'd like to thank you all for your presence. Please don't go away. We have another panel that is going to start immediately. If you don't mind, I took some of your time just to put a little point of view concerning ESP. According to me, the most successful experience in ESP is the English for pilots. All pilots around the globe speak English, and all pilots do not speak English. They speak the English for piloting. And therefore, the mistake in the teaching of ESP is when it is mixed up with English for general purposes. That's just a point of view, and thank you very much for your presence. There is an invitation coming from Clinton.
This is not a need. There is a need for you to come to us, to Kenita, because it continues the flow.
And I suggest that the team...
Le 3. No, I'm talking about the laboratory. Come to us, it's almost in the same vein. It's rich in discussion.
Of arts, and then some. His research interests include EFL teaching and learning, the 4 language skills, curriculum development, ICT integration in EFL classrooms. The floor is yours, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to thank all the members of the organizing committee who have invested so much time and effort so that such a great event like that could come into light. To justify the choice of the title, I was wondering whether I could examine something that is specific within ESP, which means that this endeavor is meant to be specific, but not more general. And specialized vocabulary in this context is pertinent because it's terminology or vocabulary that distinguishes fields or domains from the other. So the title is this English learners' perceptions or attitude of specialized vocabulary learning, the case of Insan at Moulay Ismail University. So the objective of this talk is to present the findings of a study that is meant yes. So I will repeat once again, and I say I would like to thank all the members of the organizing committee for the time and the effort they have invested in such a great event, so that it could come into life and meet here today, and I'm very pleased and glad to be within you here. To justify the choice of the topic, as I said, this endeavor is meant to examine something that is specific within English for specific purposes, and specialized vocabulary is pertinent in this case so as to be more specific but not more general. And as I said before, it's terminology. It's the first aspect that distinguishes domains and fields in different ESP settings from other domains. So the specialist discourse that is used, for example, in applied linguistics is not the specialist discourse that we use in computer science or in business. So it's terminology, that's the first aspect and the most important aspect that distinguishes these domains from each other. This talk presents the findings of a study that is meant to, we have here 3 main objectives: to elicit the students' perceptions and attitudes towards specialized vocabulary, and the key word here is perceptions or attitudes. Number 2, identify the difficulties that learners or business English learners face in specialized vocabulary learning. So, and the second key word is difficulties here. And 3, to examine the sources they use to overcome these difficulties. Sources here can be used interchangeably with strategies. As an introduction, with the emergence of English for specific purposes, English language is no longer an end in itself. And instead of being viewed as a set of phonological, lexical, or grammatical items to be internalized, it has become a tool of communication to reach various communicative needs of specific groups of learners, according to these scholars. ASP therefore is characterized by a great deal of specification and specificity. Specification, which means descriptions of how language should be used in different contexts or in the workplace situations. And specificity in the sense that English for specific purposes is more specific, and its focus is narrow, and its courses are usually more focused. Likewise, and similarly, ASP relies on area-specific lexis, or what is referred to as technical or specialized vocabulary. And specialized vocabulary has been assumed to have much importance in ASP learning process. First, it helps the learners to cope with their professional environment, and lack of such terminology can generate difficulties for the learners, and knowledge of vocabulary of a domain or a field is tightly related to the content knowledge of a particular discipline. So knowledge of specialized vocabulary specific discipline, once again, signals that you belong to a certain community which shares the same concepts and understandings of that domain. So if you are equipped with the specific terminology of applied linguistics, that signals that you belong to that community. And once again, if you are equipped with the specific terminology of business, that signals that you belong to the business community. And as a result of that, being equipped with specialized vocabulary can help learners understand what is called disciplinary knowledge, which can in turn, once again, motivate them to learn more English. Despite this importance on the overall learning process, most of previous research has tended to focus on developing word lists, or what is referred to as corpus studies, which might not be, these tests might not be enough for learners to learn vocabulary. And while this kind of corpus-based research is plentiful, we have a lot of studies, research dealing with the perceptions and attitudes of learners towards it is characterized by scarcity and shortage. There are only a handful of studies that explore such issues. Under those circumstances, the current study is meant to investigate business English learners' perceptions of specialized vocabulary learning, to inform language teachers about the difficulties they face in that process, and the preferred learning sources that learners rely on to cope with these constraints. And later on, the findings can be based on by teachers to rectify and modify their courses. So, to attain the aims of the study, we asked three main research questions. First research questions: how do business English learners view specialized vocabulary learning? Research question number 2: how often do these learners face difficulties in specialized vocabulary learning? And the last one: what are the most or least frequently used learning sources that these learners rely on to deal with specialized vocabulary difficulties? As a review of the literature, as I said before, most of the endeavors or ESP has been mainly been delved into adopting quantitative corpus-based approaches Conversely, other types of research that rely on questionnaires, surveys, observation, consulting learners and teachers, and investigating dictionary and glossaries use have not received much attention from researchers. So qualitative approaches to vocabulary research can be ignored and can be overshadowed. They can examine this domain in ways which can tell us what the difficulties the learners may face and what the resources they use to overcome those difficulties. Equally important, being concerned with the rules of learning and the sources that learners use can't be ignored. Therefore, some of the previous attempts have focused on surveys and questionnaires and even interviews to collect data about this domain. Because of time constraints, I will not go into the details of those studies. Therefore, this study relied on a sample of 90 business English learners enrolled in 6 engineering branches in ENSAM, 25 females and 55 males, and relied also on a questionnaire with 25 items to gather data or to elicit those perceptions. The questionnaire consists of 4 parts. Part 1 to elicit background information, Part 2 to elicit the perceptions of the participants, Part 3 to get or maybe to take the difficulties that the learners face, Part 4 to elicit the sources that they use to overcome those difficulties. Here is the reliability of the questionnaire. As for the data collection and analysis, the questionnaire was distributed to 100 engineering students, but 90 subjects only responded to the questionnaire, and the data was collected with the help and assistance of business English teachers in ENSAM. As for the analysis of the data were analyzed relying on disparate statistics in spaces, and closed-ended items were coded and analyzed quantitatively in spaces to convert the answers into percentages, and closed-ended questions were dealt with quantitatively and qualitatively. And here are the results of the study. So concerning the perceptions towards specialized vocabulary, most of these learners demonstrated having positive attitudes towards business English specialized vocabulary. And they thought that it's necessary to include it in business English courses as can be seen in item 1 and 5 here. So these results demonstrate that they have positive attitudes, and they think also that it can help them to perform better in occupational life and can enhance their language skills like speaking, writing, listening, and reading. However, specialized vocabulary is thought to be not that easy, and as can be seen in item 3, learning specialized vocabulary is not an easy task. Here it is thought to be true by 46.7% of the participants. And therefore, learners are likely to face difficulty in that process. And these difficulties can be seen here. So the most encountered difficulties that these learners face are semantic constraints related to the meaning of vocab, followed by orthographic aspects, as can be seen here by length of words and spelling, followed by phonetic constraints, and then the last item is the difficulty to distinguish general vocabulary from specialized vocabulary, which is not always easy. As for the sources that these learners use to reckon with these difficulties and constraints, the results showed that the learners mainly relied on the first 5 items. Here they relied on their teachers and in-class courses, followed by here we have reading comprehension text, definitions of vocabulary, pictures and graphics in the textbooks. They rely also on the structure of words, and list of vocabulary brought by the teacher to the classroom. And as can be seen here, most of these sources are tightly related to the classroom practices and the teacher and the textbooks, which means that these learners rely on the teacher, the textbook, and the classroom practices at the expense of other sources like Google Translation and different versions of dictionaries like bilingual English-French dictionaries and the general monolingual English dictionaries. So here only 27.8% use general monolingual English dictionaries. And as can be seen here, the less frequently used source among these sources is specialized business dictionaries. So they don't use specialized business dictionaries. This can be due to maybe to the unawareness of these learners of this source, or maybe it could be due to the shortage or scarcity of specialized dictionaries. Along with these items, the learners were asked to write about their experience of vocabulary learning sources and to suggest other sources, and they suggest these sources here. We have videos, games, learning by fun, reading various texts of business, presentations and in-class discussions, pictures and graphics, dictionaries and outside activities. And these results are in accordance with the previous results. As you can see here, dictionaries and outside activities were not given much attention by these learners. To conclude, as a summary of the study, the whole summary, we could say that the participants held positive attitudes towards specialized vocabulary and its integration within business English courses. This vocabulary can help them cope with their occupational life and can enhance their abilities in the foreign language skills. However, they face difficulties. These difficulties could be classified as semantic, or could be semantic, orthographic, or phonetic, or sometimes confusing general vocabulary with specialized vocabulary. To reckon or to deal with these problems, the learners relied heavily on their teachers' explanations, the textbook, and the classroom practices at the expense of using other sources like Google Translation, dictionaries, or even online dictionaries and activities outside the classroom. As for the implications, we have here implications for learners, but not, of course, implications for policymakers, as we have stated before, because the adopted approach is already a top-down approach. So we have here implications for learners, and it would be better to start from the pattern. So business English learners can make use of a variety of learning sources and not depend solely on their teachers and classroom practices to learn specialized vocabulary. So here we can suggest reading comprehension text inside and outside class, audio and video materials, list of vocabulary, etc. Just 1 minute. And learners can learn by themselves. So learners can learn by themselves and from their classmates. And bear in mind that teachers today are not the only source of knowledge. It's necessary to raise the awareness of learners to use a variety of learning sources for teachers. These are applications for teachers. Strategy teaching could be used to familiarize learners with unknown learning sources, engage learners in outside activities to promote their autonomy and self-learning, and guidance on the use of technical dictionaries could be provided to the learners. And if the scarce use of these dictionaries is generated by their shortage, maybe researchers and dictionary designers can invest much effort in technical dictionary design. And future research and researchers are to adopt hybrid mixed, when I say hybrid mixed approach, which means mixing between qualitative and quantitative approaches to investigate vocabulary and other good research issues in ESP. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Aki. Now we'll move to our second speakers, Ms. Riham Bukhair and Madani Sadiq, who are going to present their work entitled The Potential Role of Needs Analysis in ESP Course Design Case of Master 1 Students of Big Data Analytics and Smart Systems at Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University. Riham is a high school teacher and PhD student at the Faculty of Latin. Sadiq Madani is an associate professor and lecturer in the Department of English Studies at Faculty of Letters and Human Sciences in Belgrade. He has been teaching English for more than 25 years. Currently, he is teaching linguistics, media and cultural studies, and intercultural communication. He took part in the MA program in Applied Linguistics at Monash Ismail University and Language Communication Society. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you all the organizing committee for this scientific manifestations. And of course, this paper, which is a joint work with my doctoral students, Riham Bukhair, who did most of the part of the work. We commend her on that, of course, and is entitled for the potential role of needs analysis in ESP course design, in case of the Master 1 students of Big Data Analytics, which is especially a current topic in the faculty of the English. So I give the floor to Riham to make most of the presentation because she masters most of the content of the presentation. Thank you.
So first of all, thank you very much for having me here. So I would like to thank Mr. Laroux for giving me the chance to participate in this conference. And it's a pleasure seeing you all gathered here today. And I would like to express my great gratitude to Mr. Madani for his guidance, support, and immense knowledge. So as you can see from the title, my presentation is about the potential role of needs analysis in ESP course design, and a case of Master 1 students of Big Data Analytics and Smart Systems at the University of Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah. So nowadays, the English language, which was once the language of the early medieval England, has become the language of all people around the world, regardless of their sex, age, gender, nationality, race, etc. So the significant role of English is due to several factors. For instance, we have literary and technical books, academic journals, and also a quarter of periodicals are in the English language. Furthermore, more than 85% of international conferences carry on proceedings in the English language. And this idea is confirmed by sorry?
Chairman is counting the time.
Yes, I'm sorry. So this idea is confirmed by Seibhofer, 2001, who states that only 1/4 of all English users worldwide are native speakers, and most non-native speakers using English do so in the absence of native speakers. So, as we can see here, a lot of people are able to communicate in the English language fluently in the absence of native speakers. So, as you know, English is selected to be an international language. And it is spoken all over the world. So, because of these demands, a subcategory of English language teaching is presented under the label of ESP. ESP is English for specific purposes, or English for special purposes, ESP, okay? Now, according to I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes. So according to Castora, Veronica, and Amelia 2014, ESP is a very broad domain referring mainly to teaching English to students or people who need it for specific purposes, such as work, professional settings, or in their future occupational development. So in these faculties, ESP is the main instrument for teaching a foreign language, in contrast to general English. ESP starts from the assessment of those functions and purposes for which English is required, as well as of the skills the learner might need most. What we can understand from this quote is that English is mainly used to train students to read and understand their field of study, and also to prepare them for professional settings in the future. So now, our study is going to answer the following research questions. What are the language needs of students in the Faculty of Science? What are the perceptions of teachers and students towards English teaching and learning? How can needs analysis help ESP teachers in the elaboration of effective courses? What specific needs do master's students consider as most crucial in their English course? So in order to answer these questions, 50 students of Master 1, Big Data, Analytics and Smart Systems were chosen in order to participate in the study. So we chose this category of students because they are adults and tend to be more mature than the younger students. So regarding the prior knowledge of these students, all of them studied English in their school requirements, except two who have studied Spanish. And they have never the chance to live in an English-speaking country. So, in order to get valid data about this research, we opted for two instruments. The first one is a structured questionnaire for students in order to get their opinions and perceptions about the current ESP course in the Faculty of Science at Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University, and a structured interview with teachers in order to investigate or to expose the application of ESP courses, or the application of needs analysis in ESP courses. Now, we move to the results. For the questionnaire that we distributed to students, concerning the first question, is students' age and distribution. Why this question? The main reason behind this question is to include students, and in order to increase their participation and responsibility to gaining or obtaining pertinent data that is relevant to them. So the heterogeneity of students reveal that they have different learning experiences and different learning styles. As you can see from the graph, we have 58% of students are aged between 20 and 25 years old. Then we have 32% are aged between 25 and 30 years old. And then we have 10% of them are over 13 years old. Or 30, sorry. Yeah. For the second question, the importance of English in their field of study. So statistics demonstrate that 80% of students think that English is important in their field of study, and only 20% they said no, it is not important. So from this question we can conclude that students are well aware of the English language and they are yearning to learn English, they are interested in the English language. For the third question, we have students' description of their attitude towards learning English. As we can see here, 66% of these students are interested in learning the language. Then we have 24 of them are very interested, and only 10 or 5 participants who attributed their disinterest in learning English. So what we can conclude from here is that the vast majority, for about 19% of students, are aware of the importance of the English language. Now, concerning skill ranking, according to its importance to students' field, so the results displayed indicate that speaking is the first skill, and it is followed by writing, listening, then reading. So when I asked these students, they said speaking is important because it allows them to talk with each other, to talk with people, and to voice their problems and mainly their needs. And for writing, it is important. Why? Because it allows future workers to communicate with other people through writing emails or professional emails, etc. Now, for the teacher's interview, in order to expose or to investigate the application of needs analysis in ESP courses, we asked teachers, the first question was, have you had any training in ESP? So all participants declared that they didn't have any training, but as they said, they did self-instruction in order to enlarge the knowledge about the subject area. So here we have teacher one pointed out, unfortunately, I haven't had any training in ESP teaching. ESP teachers often prefer to work independently. I acquired the practices of ESP throughout reading. Participant 2 or teacher 2 also stated, I am a teacher of general English, but I wished I had training in ESP teaching so that I could acquire the necessary techniques to design my courses. Then we have teacher 3 who confirmed this idea by mentioning we should be trained on how to design syllabi driven by needs analysis. So teachers are not trained to teach ESP. But the question here, do we really have ESP teachers? I think we just have general teachers who try to teach ESP, because even if we try to train these teachers, it's impossible. How can we train a teacher to become a teacher who teaches English for medicine, English for engineering, English for business, etc.? I think it's really hard. Now, the second question, do you need needs analysis before designing an ESP course? If not, why? So all of them said that it is important, or having needs analysis is a crucial key point in designing programs or syllabi. For example, teacher 2 stated, I always ask my students at the beginning of each semester about what they want to learn in English. I think this is not needs analysis. For example, if we ask students, so every student is going to mention their needs, or his needs or her needs, and it is impossible to satisfy all needs. Teacher 5 added, I use needs analysis before I start my lessons, because it is the cornerstone of ESP. I always do it. It is of huge importance. Then we have teacher 3 pointed out, I never conduct needs analysis because the administration provides us with some aspects of language that should be covered. Now, the third question and the last one, do you cooperate with specialists in your content choice? This is an important question, because how a general English teacher is going to design a program for students and he is not a specialist in that field? It's impossible. And they said that they won't cooperate with other specialists. For example, teacher 1 said, language specialists are not cooperative even if when they try to collaborate, they inform only about what learners study in general. They don't provide us with the mandatory documents to help ESP teachers merge into different disciplines to design courses in relation to the defined objectives. So there is no cooperation, no collaboration with specialists. And then teacher 4 explained, no, I don't collaborate with specialists. I conduct my own research to collect as much information as possible about the lesson in question. So the results of the questionnaire revealed that students are well aware of the importance of English, and despite of having a positive attitude towards learning English, they have some deficiencies, mainly in productive skills like writing and speaking, and eventually it is crystal clear that the actual or the current ESP courses are not based on predetermined objectives. Now, if we talk about the results of the interviews, teachers confirmed or the idea that needs analysis is very important in order to design what? An ESP course. Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. And I want to conclude. So just to conclude, I want to say that the current ESP course needs a lot of attention in order to meet students' needs.
Thank you for respecting time, and thank you for your insightful presentation. Now we move to our third speakers, Jihan Ben Saud and Fatima Zahra. So, Jihad bin Saoud is an English teacher at the American Language Center here in Meknes, PhD holder in the field of language and society from Ibn Tufayl University in Iraq, and also she's a holder of CELTA diploma from the International Training Institute in Istanbul. She in fact is also an associate member of a multidisciplinary research team on women at the Faculty of Arts and Human Sciences, Meknes, and she's also a part-time teacher at this faculty. Ms. Groom Fatim Zara is a doctorate candidate at the University Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah. Says she got her master's degree in communication in context in 2014, and she is currently an English teacher at the American Language Center. She is also a part-time teacher at this faculty. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. the Chairman. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Larouz and the organizers for giving us this opportunity to present our paper, our paper entitled The Use of English and French Languages Prior to and During Employment, Experiences and Needs of Moroccan Managers and Employees. Our paper focuses on describing the situation of French and English language in the Moroccan context. It also aims at creating a better understanding of the effectiveness and the importance of English in the Moroccan education and business communication. The Moroccan market has become increasingly involved in the global business and still depends highly in French language in the national and international operations. Yet English has a minor role either in Moroccan education or business communication, even if it is considered as a common corporate language or the lingua franca. The purpose of our study is to determine the opinions of the hotel employees and managers about the use and importance that English and French play in their professional life. The study examined the effect of different variables such as gender, years of experience, level of education, linguistic, and communicative skills. So our study uses questionnaire to collect data. First, we'll proceed as an introduction, theoretical part, the situation of French and English in Moroccan business market. The methodology, we have proceeded to collect our data, results, analysis, and at the end, we'll present some recommendations as conclusions. The situation of French and English in Morocco. Morocco is a multilingual society in the sense that different local as well as foreign languages coexist, like French, Spanish, and English. According to Zuhair 2003, Morocco was under the French protectorate from 1912 to 1956. 44 years of colonization was enough for a rebirth of a new linguistic repertoire in Moroccan history. After independence, the French language became the primary language used in most administrative and official papers in formal sitting. Lotfi and Merman, 2014, claimed that French language has been deeply rooted in Moroccan society. They said the French occupation has in a sense enriched the Moroccan linguistic market through introducing the French language. French has enjoyed a privileged status over the other foreign languages and gained significant ground on the native language spoken in Morocco. Page 3. Morocco inherited the Francophone system of education and administration. Policymakers decided to methodize a bilingual education, Sadiqi 2005. Education in Morocco is officially compulsory for 9 years for children aged 6 to 14, enseignement fondamental. The language of institution in secondary is Arabic, and French is compulsory subject of the curriculum. English is offered as a foreign language in secondary education. Higher education in sciences is still provided in French, whereas in the language used in humanities and social sciences is usually Arabic. Education System Morocco, first edition, October 2015. The situation now of English in Morocco. Sadiqi in 1991 reported a survey about the spread of English in Morocco in which he stated that 87% of Moroccans welcomed the idea of English language spread in a Moroccan school since it has no colonial connotation. Therefore, 81% of Moroccans think that English language is useful for Moroccans. Sadiqi cited that in 1991, an increasing number of Moroccan scientists started to publish their articles in English in various fields. The situation of French in international business communication. French language dominates the Moroccan business market, hence the use of French for business communication opens possibilities to expand business. The French language is mainly used in various industries like business companies, call centers, and banks, in which more services, transactions, and papers are used in French. However, in the tourism sector, Morocco depends on the diversity of languages as means to communicate with foreign tourists. The use of French has been proven to be efficient for Moroccan business because of French-Moroccan diplomatic matters and accessibility to Europe. Euromonitor International 2012. For the situation of English in international business communication, that we are living in an era of globalization, English is at the top of languages mostly used in international business. A vast majority of business communication in English is carried out by non-native speakers of English. In a cross-cultural exchange of information, the sender and the recipient come from different cultural backgrounds. There is an increasing number of international companies in which English is a common corporate language that facilitates communication and performance across business, like big companies like Nokia, Samsung, Microsoft. According to Bloomberg ranking 2011, English is the first language of business communication, followed by Chinese. For Baker 2011, English is a lingua franca of business and a tool of communication used in business to perform presentations and send emails and write legal documentations. Now, to proceed for the purpose of the study, I will let you guys with Jihad to explain more about the methodology we conducted for our study.
Hello everyone. So I will move straight forward to present the study. So the purpose of the study is as the following. So it's meant to determine the reasons for using French as a major language in business communication. Thank you very much. In business communication, we mean here the workplace. Most of the time when we conduct needs analysis, we see that in the previous study done mostly about students. In this time, we're thinking to conduct needs analysis, but this time we'll go straight to the workplace. Okay? So we collected data through a quantitative method. So the instrument or the main instrument used was questionnaires. The questionnaire would take 15 minutes to be filled, and we have targeted hotels. The cities there were 3 cities, Tétouan, Tangier, and El Houd, and the questionnaires were distributed on both managers and employees. So the hotels targeted in Tétouan are Shams, Prestige, and La Paloma. In Tangier, Hilton, César, in Corrigas, and Royal Tulip. In El Houd, it's Bellini. So for the number of the participants, the managers were 10 managers, 34 employees, and 24 in the total. Okay? So concerning the gender distribution, we have found that there are 51% employees
are females and 20% managers. Concerning the males, 80% were males, and they were managers, and 49% for employees. We can see the difference when it comes to managers in particular. There are more males than females, but it's not our concern today. Okay? We'll move to the level of education. So we have from bac +1 to bac +2, bac +3, bac and more. Okay? So we can see here that most of the employees have got bac +2, while most of the managers have got bac more than 3. Okay, because we can see here the bac +3 is already there, but here it's more. Okay. Concerning the learning of English as a foreign language, we can see that most of the managers, 70%, were introduced to English in the primary school. But only 12% of the employees were introduced to English in the primary school. When we move to the middle school, we can see there is an equivalent, and I guess you all can understand that because it's part of our curriculum, right? For language proficiency, we can see that most, I would say both managers and employees feel that they are linguistically proficient when it comes to French, but they still doubt themselves when it comes to English. Still, when we compare employees to managers, it's 20% managers and only 15% for employees. We have asked them about the most difficult language, or their most difficult language, and they stated, both managers and employees, they stated that English, 80% find it the most difficult language, but only 20% find French as the most difficult language. Now we moved from that to another question, which is about the most difficult skill. So we can see that the most difficult skill, according to both the managers and employees, are the speaking skill with 39% and the writing skill with 33%. Another question was, what was the most preferred language for both managers and employees? They both answered with French. So, and it was an open-ended question because we said why. Which one is your favorite and why? Their answers were as the following. Concerning the managers, they say that French is the dominant language in Morocco. It's the easiest. They feel that they are competent when it comes to French. It's the language that they have studied the most. But when it comes to English, they have said that they have got a good level. They studied it in British or in American school, so they feel more confident. They would like to broaden their scope. As for employees, it's almost the same. So in French, easy language, they prefer to use it in communication. French was the most studied and the language used in Morocco. As for English, they prefer to communicate again with it, good level, and they think it's the global language. Another question was, what was the most important business language in Morocco? The language that was chosen by the majority, 94%, stated that it was, or it is, English. We have asked them about their needs, or the needs of the English language skills that they need now, like according to their experience. They say we need to improve listening to non-native speakers' accent. They also say we need to develop our understanding to technical words. They believe that they need to understand pronouncing, or they need to pronounce English clearly. Selecting correct word choice while speaking. Conducting an English negotiation, since we are talking about business communication here. And writing business emails. So according to the findings, to sum up, they feel, or they think that French is the dominant language in business communication. French is the most preferred, the easiest, and the well-mastered language.
English is the hardest, the less studied language by the majority. English is the international business communication as a fundamental thing. French is not enough to reach a global language. And the last thing, the most difficult skill in English language are speaking and writing skills. So we would like to share with you some of the implications, and they are as the following. As a conclusion, there should be an annual re-evaluation of English for business managers and employees courses by conducting research on novice and experienced ones to improve the courses in relation to the current trend of workplace needs. The second thing, teachers should investigate how their students perceive their proficiency. Using self-reports will reveal whether their students are confident or anxious English users. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 3 minutes extra.
Thank you very much.
Now let's open 10 minutes discussion. I hope you're not getting hungry, because sometimes when some people get hungry, they get angry. So, Yunus is an active student this morning. Students first, Yunus.
Yes, after students.
Alia. Huh? Alia. Okay, yes. عندي واحد. أنور. عبو. I think let's start with these. Could you please be brief and direct in your questions and comments? Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me again the opportunity of asking my questions. So I'm active today because I am conducting a research project about English for specific purposes under the supervision of Professor Kabar. So my first question is addressed to Mr. Kifuad, who talks about the teaching of a specialized language. So while conducting my research, I found that in the beginning of English for specific purposes of the 1970s, they used to use genre analysis. In this prospect, they used to take out the words of the vocab and they taught it outside the meaning or the sentence. However, after that, this approach was abandoned, and then discourse analysis was the used one. In discourse analysis, we don't take the word outside the context or the meaning. We take the sentence, the whole sentence. So, do you think that this approach, which focuses on teaching vocab or specialized vocab, isn't a little bit old? Or what are the new things that we can use to use it now? And the second question is for Dr. Rita. So your needs analysis was concerned on present situation analysis, which is a needs analysis that is used before beginning the course. So what about target situation analysis that try to evaluate the skills that the students get after finishing the course? Thank you.
Thank you, Yunus. Let's give the floor to Ali.
Hello. Hello everyone. First of all, I would like to thank all the professors here for their insightful presentations, the current professors and the previous ones. And actually my question, I think any one of you can answer my question. Basically, I would like to know what needs analysis actually is, because there was no actual explanation. What is based? What is it based on? How is data collected? What kind of needs are we talking about here? So I would like a quick answer for this question if possible. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Abdouad.
Thank you so much, dear professors, for providing online. Just for clarity on mind and vision, this question is addressed to Professor Ilham Kabir. What an ESP teacher should teach? Because to my knowledge, ESP emerges from the communicative approach, from communicative language teaching. So there was a need, to prepare students for this reality. And to provide them with the necessary communication skills to communicate outside, the building, outside the classroom. We had like a course which is called Language and Professional Life, for example, in the BA program. We were exposed to, the necessary skills that we need, for example, when interviewing, for example, when writing a business letter. So this is for me, this is how I consider ESP. Just to acquire the necessary skills that will allow you to speak outside the classroom, to face reality itself. So what an ESP teacher should teach for you? Because you said that we don't have ESP, in Morocco. And thank you so much.
Thank you. We move to Anwar.
My questions are for Ms. Nehan. The first question is about the claim that you raised so far. You said that ESP to have teachers that are specialized in ESP is something impossible. On which argument did you build your discipline? Why can't we have teachers who teach only ESP? The second one is about you said asking students is not needs analysis. Don't you agree with me that it depends? It depends on the age of the learners, it depends on the level of the learners. Don't you think that sometimes asking the learners face-to-face is maybe more valid, or it's better? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move to Professor Bu.
Hello.
And just they are calling for lunch, so could you please be brief?
So that's basic need. My remarks are to enhance research, not to hinder research, first of all. I felt that I have no place to be within, because as a teacher of letters or whatever you would call it, drama or cultural studies, I have no place there according to Rehan. Because there is no place for us in her talk, as well as in Jihan's. Now, the reliability of the research, I think, is that you relied on lopsided measurement of, you just go for that what you call perceived, objective needs, etc. What about the felt needs, the subjective needs, the learning needs? I think if we don't know, that would be incomplete. So let's think of that, because there is a series of needs. We could, according to the literature of the domain, we have the perceived needs, felt needs, subjective, objective needs, target needs, learning needs, situational needs, communicative needs. From my own experience, which is very modest, of about 16 years teaching business English, all over, throughout, upside down, and I have a testimony with me here in Casablanca. I taught someone in Palmolive, I taught someone in Primagaz, I taught in Comanam. Just go ahead, remember. It's all over. Was it a need to have someone just to, or? I don't know. I'm asking the question. Where am I then? Okay. So what I want to say, is it not a matter I also use, the term, the specialist, the specific term of the conference, the technolics, I would say, of the conference. Is it not a need of input? Because that is the crux of the problem. When the input is, there is no output. Go to Marrakesh, for example, and you might find people who are, I would say that word better, but they are in whatever you like in English, German, Russian, whatever. Perfect. I call some to come to my class to testify for me. But that's the input. Should we not work on the input in our classes, in our classrooms, to go for so is this my second? And I'm for research.
Yeah, okay.
I can go with me. We don't have lunch, and we go for. What is missing in all talks about? What is missing about this talk about ESP? And that's I'm a bit apprehensive. What is the place of culture or business culture? We talk business English, business culture, and the mother and the baby, they can be separated. Okay? And what is so specific about specific English? What is so specific? Because I used to call it not English for specific purpose, English for special English. What is specific about it? And the questions are, it's hard work for us all.
Yeah.
That's all I could say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
The last one, yes, please.
Good afternoon. I thank the speakers for the insightful presentations. So my question, or maybe my comment, will be addressed to my colleague, Rihan Bilkbir. I actually agree with you and concerning everything that you said, except one thing that you mentioned about training teachers to become ESP teachers. I believe that teachers or ESP teachers are in a unique position compared to the regular teachers who perceive themselves as experts, which is somehow true, because they are imparting maybe their knowledge of language to their students. But when we talk about ESP teachers, we are talking about teachers who must be honest in the classroom, must be honest about their role in the classrooms, and must not deceive their students into believing that they are experts in the field. So they must present themselves as teachers of a target language, but not of the target field. You see, so maybe they are more students of the target field and teachers of the target language. So this is my point. So I see eye to eye with you in everything, but concerning this question, I think they don't need any training because they are already students in the target field. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's go in the order of the presentations, and could you please be brief answering your questions, Mr. Aki.
Mr. Chairman, I will start with the question that highlights ESP, or the meaning of ESP. I do agree that ESP is a very broad domain, and even research conducted in this domain, it could be even a preparatory research. Usually the researchers tend to conduct ESP before courses or even after courses, or sometimes even during courses, to investigate and to get perceptions about different, or to get ideas about interests, needs, difficulties, sources used and strategies used by learners. And because this domain is very broad, I will move now to the question of the, I sought to choose something that is specific, as I said before, and I justified the choice of specialized vocabulary, and they say that it is thought to generate a lot of difficulties for ESP learners. And also, at the same time, it helps learners to speak, concerning its importance to speak and write about their disciplines. As for the other types of research like journal analysis, discourse analysis, or even textual analysis, these are other types of research that share with specialized vocabulary, they share the same concepts of investigating the specialist discourse that is used in each setting and in each context. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Serki. We move to Anadania.
So concerning the first question, I think that teachers should teach everything. What I mean here is they should teach speaking, listening, writing. Why? Because they are interrelated. For example, in the Faculty of Science at Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University and also in ENSA, for example, students, when they are taught English, they study, for example, for big data analytics and smart systems, they are specialized in mathematics. But in the syllabus, they study English for computer science. So how come? And even for ENSA, for example, we have engineers, already will become engineers in the future, and they study things like concrete, wood, metals, materials. These items are not going to be found in the job market. And for the second question, you are right. I shouldn't have said that we don't have ESP in Morocco. I should have said we don't have ESP teachers who are specialized in certain fields. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Just to add, because I think this conference is meant above all for students, but I think that there are some students who are still striving to understand what needs analysis. It is something manifested in the question of one of the students. I think we'll just reserve to talk about needs analysis requires more than 1 minute or two, but just to understand this. So we have two types of English: general English, that is taught, of course, at universities, etc. And we have English for specific purpose, that requires some method of gathering, I would say, data in order to meet the requirement and the needs and the wants of students. It's not, we'll just imagine this. I have been teaching, I think, English for a specific purpose at the Islam School for about 2 years, I think. And we work together, of course, with a team of teachers and professors to meet the requirements of those needs. Believe me here, the English used at those schools, for example, English for engineering, or English for mechanical engineering, or electrical engineering, or English for finance, English for banking, these types of ESP or requires specific jargon to be taught to students in order to meet their wants as potential, I would say, recruiters in the field they are working. And needs analysis dates back to 20s, and it started exactly with Mumby in 1978. Then it has been, of course, proven and I would say researched again and again all along. Various researchers, various scholars like Hutchison and Waters, Berkwick, Long, Colin, and it's always a long, I would say, term research about the field, and that is everlasting and still going on, because you need, of course, to carry out this analysis of needs in order to design a course that can meet the requirements and wants of the learners. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let's call it a long morning, and we'll come back in the afternoon. Thank you, sir.